Man, it's like all the news in the world got dumped today. It's crazy. We got news in the Trump camp. Trump's going to be turning himself in next week, so that's fairly crazy. We got the Tate bros have been released, which is pretty crazy. I think that's good news considering they haven't been charged with a crime. At least that's the latest. I don't know if they have been lately, but last I heard they were not even charged with the crimes. And then that dude Mackey, who made a meme, got convicted. So it's just a very crazy day. Plus, you've got these tornadoes hitting in the South. So, condolences to everybody. Hope everybody's safe. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to have Donald Trump Jr. is going to be calling in to talk about the indictment against his father. So I'm not going to waste any time. Let's jump right into our sponsor for tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, this show is brought to you by castbrew.com. If you would like coffee whose mascot is a rooster, and you would like a coffee blend called Rise with Roberto Jr., a light roast for breakfast, well, then you got to go to castbrew.com and purchase our Cast Brew coffee. It is certified USDA organic. We also have a very robust dark blend called Appalachian Nights. And available right now, we also have a Colombian and French roast. And guess what? This is our company. We own it. We're sponsoring ourselves. If you guys want to support the show, you can buy coffee. It's a pre-order. We'll ship by the 5th. And we've already sold over $20,000 worth of coffee product with only 4 options so far. We're building it out. We're hoping to have 4 signature blends, a seasonal blend. And this is going to help kick off the coffee shop that we are currently building out right now. And then we're going to try and create a whole bunch of these all across the country where we can create a communal space. So castbrew.com, buy our coffee. And also head over to timcast.com, become a member to support our work. Because as a member, you get access to uncensored members-only shows Monday through Thursday, as well as our Discord server where you can hang out with people, network, start companies, whatever it is you guys want to do. We're doing a new cool thing. Starting probably next week or maybe the next 2 weeks, Friday's sponsorships will be reserved for our members. This was brought up by a member in our call-in segment, and he said, how about your members are your sponsors? Why don't you shout out your members who have companies or projects? I said, that is brilliant. So already a really great idea from a member. So we're going to try and set up a system whereby y'all who are members can decide who has the cool project that we should promote. And then Friday night, the show will be brought to you by that member who has that company. I think it's a brilliant idea, and I'm really excited to do it. So become a member if you want to be involved in the community stuff that we're building and all of that, the physical location, the clubs and everything like that. Smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about all of this and more is Alex Bruesewitz.
Thanks for having me, Tim. It's great to be here with you fine gentlemen on this Friday evening. But I'm Alex Bruesewitz. I'm a political consultant. I work with a lot of the most pro-Trump and MAGA members, and we like to have a lot of fun. We like to piss a lot of people off, and I got to move over real quick.
Yeah, but, there you go.
We piss a lot of people off on Twitter, and hopefully some of my haters and the losers are tuning in tonight because there's a lot to discuss. But it's great to be here on this Friday with you fine gentlemen.
Right on. We got Alad hanging out as well.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Alad Eliyahu. I'm a journalist over at Timcast News. Tim, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Phil Labonte.
Hello, I am Phil Labonte, lead singer of All That Remains, anti-communist, counter-revolutionary.
I'm Ian Crossan. What's up, dudes? Also, we'll mention Twitter open sourced a bunch of code today. The first step on a long journey of awesomeness.
And that's another thing. I forgot about that, too. There's so much news. In the code, there were identifiers if you were a Democrat, a Republican, a VIP, or Elon Musk.
Elon was like, it's going to be embarrassing, but this is the road.
Which one do you think they gave preferential treatment to?
I have.
Yeah, right.
I wonder. Let's find out.
The reason they created the qualifiers in the first place was to be like, don't block these people, block those people.
We also have Mr. Kellen.
That's right. Elon freed the code on my birthday for me.
He did. Yeah, he told us.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
You guys.
So let's just jump right into this first story. It says from the Washington Post, Trump plans to turn himself in for arraignment Tuesday, reports the Washington Post. I mean, that's basically it. They say former President Trump plans to fly from Florida to New York on Monday before appearing in a specially secured Manhattan courthouse to be arraigned on still unspecified criminal charges. People briefed on the arraignment said Trump is not going to hole up in Mar-a-Lago. His lawyer, Joe Tacopina, said Friday, a day after news of the Manhattan grand jury's indictment broke. So I guess the question here is, how do they even do this? Like, he's going to have to be released on bail on his own recognizance. They're not going to put him in jail. What is the Secret Service going to go in jail with him?
Well, it's never happened in the history of our country. In our 250 years as a republic, this has never happened before. But from my understanding, Secret Service is taking lead on this process. So they've been working with the NYPD. And so on Tuesday, he's going to be arraigned. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's terrible this is happening in our country. This is third world crap. This is a banana republic now. But I got to say, they're going to regret that, putting that guy on a mugshot. Can you imagine the T-shirts that are going to come from that?
One of the stories we'll get to later is how Joe Biden's going to spend the rest of his days with Hunter behind bars because they set the precedent. But you've also got that Mackey guy who made a meme in 2016. He just got convicted formally by, I think it was a jury, right? Yeah. And there's a woman who did the same thing he did, and she got no charges.
And what he did was he made a meme that said, instead of going to vote, text your vote to this number, which was a false thing. And so they're like, hey, you can't mislead
people. And they couldn't
people.
Find a single victim.
But the girl did the exact same thing. Hey, instead of voting for Trump, don't wait in long lines, text this number with your vote.
And it's like, texts are totally, she didn't post a number though, but she did say text voting is legitimate. So I'm saying we're already in it. We are absolutely in it.
100%. And, on January 6th, all the people that brought a Trump flag to the Capitol and peacefully protested, they're spending years and years behind bars. But just a couple of days ago, transurrectionists stormed state capitals across the country, and they're never going to see a day in jail.
And so, not only that, but they attacked cops. There's videos of them pushing and fighting with cops. And there was a shaman.
Although I think
there was a shaman.
I'll back those guys up on their rights. I'm saying guys for men and women and everybody's guys in my opinion. That's how I talk. But like it didn't seem I wouldn't call it violent. When the politicians came into this is in Tennessee, the one I saw, the cops grabbed people to move them out of the way. There was a little pushing and pulling. I didn't see any blood. I didn't see anyone striking anyone. So I support your right to protest.
I didn't see any police throwing flashbangs into the crowds or tear gassing these innocent protesters.
It's not just about that. It's about the protesters were holding up 7 fingers as a protest sign, which signifies that the perpetrator of the mass shooting was a victim. That, like, you are in a cold civil war. And I don't even know if it's fair to call it cold, because the power of the federal government is being wielded to beat people on the right into submission. It is the weight of executive authority crushing down on people. So I don't think it's fair to call it cold. I think we have seen physical confrontations. We have seen death. We saw the far left try to burn down the White House, burn down St. John's Church. And we saw, even with January 6th, the fighting on one side, like, the conflict is hot. It's happening. It's just not like people are so ignorant to history of the world. They expect there to be a formal declaration by Virginia. We hereby declare we are declaring civil war. And then for New York to be like, we are mobilizing our troops to fight you. And then they march down the street towards each other. What do they think war is?
I don't know. Well, I think Jack Posobiec summed this week up pretty well. He said this week they indicted their top political opponent, convicted a descendant, and one of their nuts shot up a school full of Christian children. And that's just 1 week. And it's so true. That's what's happening. I mean, they threw a guy, they're trying to put a guy who made a meme mocking Hillary Clinton, and believe me, there's a lot of material there to mock her with. But they're throwing this guy in prison. They're trying to throw him in prison for making a frickin' meme. And every single person needs to be speaking out in defense of Douglas Mackey. Every journalist, I saw some journalists that were giddy about this guy being indicted. Yep. These are the people that are supposed to protect the First Amendment and care about issues like this, but they're celebrating a guy who mocked a political figure for going, and they want him to go to jail.
What's the legality if I stood outside of like a voting place and told people it's shut down today, guys, go home?
The legality doesn't matter, obviously and clearly.
Well, what he did was tell them instead of don't go vote, instead just text it here.
It doesn't matter.
He didn't tell anyone. He posted a meme to like nobody on the internet.
So what is the legality? Can I stand outside of a voting station and tell people it's closed today, everyone go home?
If you're a Democrat, absolutely. Just make sure you register as a Democrat before.
But I mean, I'm being serious. Is it legal or illegal to do that?
You cannot go to an individual and lie to them to trick them into not voting.
Okay, that's my question. And that's what this person, you're right, he didn't go to an individual.
And there were no victims.
Okay.
And there was a woman who was a Democrat who did the exact same thing who wasn't charged. So I'm not interested in hearing any arguments about it.
He's going to jail for election interference, right? You want to talk about election interference? The left is concerned about election interference, that they want to throw a memer in jail, but they're celebrating corrupt and obese Alvin Bragg for throwing the top trying to throw the top political opponent in jail. That's election interference, if we're talking about election interference, not some guy who made a meme that barely anybody saw. And so these people are sick, and they tried them in Brooklyn, right? No conservative is going to get a fair shake in Brooklyn. No conservative is going to get a fair shake in D.C. And
They're going to convict him.
It's terrible. That's what's happening.
And then they're going to push for jail time because they're saying it's 34 counts. They're going to move for they are going to try to put him. The reason they're doing it at the state level is because he can still run for president. He can still win the presidency. And if it was a federal crime, which the Fed said we can't try him for this, then he'd be able to pardon himself. But it's a state level crime, so they lock him up. They lock him up.
Alex, I wanted to follow up and ask you about this. There's been interesting reactions to this indictment across the political spectrum. One from Governor Ron DeSantis, whose tweet reads, "The weaponization of the legal system to advance a political agenda turns the rule of law on its head. It is un-American." He says the Soros-backed Manhattan DA has consistently bent the law to downgrade felonies and to excuse criminal conduct, yet now he is stretching the law to target a political opponent. And then most interestingly, at the end of his tweet, he says Florida will not assist in an extradition request given the questionable circumstances at issue with this Soros-backed Manhattan prosecutor and his political agenda. Can I get your reaction to this?
Yeah, so that second part, we'll start with the second part. That's not even an issue. That's not even been a part of the discussion, and that's just him trying to get some attention out of this. This stuff for his own political gain. But the first part of it, his strong statement came after 48 hours of attacks, because when it first was reported, he was completely silent. And then when he finally opened his mouth about it that Monday, his consultants had him read this script at a press conference at a planted question. And he says that it's a sideshow. He said he's not going to be distracted by a circus. He said he's focused on Florida. Then he traveled to whatever state to sell his book. But he only responded because he had so much outside pressure. And he had, it was terrible for him in the polls. He started going down in the polls after
Do you
failing
think
to
that
respond.
second part is bait, where he says Florida will not assist in an extradition request given the questionable circumstances at issue with this Soros-backed Manhattan prosecutor and his political allies?
Again, I think that is simply just him trying to save face and try to get some publicity for himself out of this movement. There's not even been a conversation about that. And then you had a lot of the DeSantis influencers who don't influence much that were pushing a narrative about how, if Trump really wants to fight the political persecution, he should take a stand and listen to DeSantis and refuse to be extradited. And I think that's just so foolish.
The Soros DAs it's popular to attack them nowadays. He's mentioned Soros twice in this tweet. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I'm no fan of Soros, and Soros waited on the 2024 election. He said that he believes Ron DeSantis will be the nominee and will cause Trump to go into some narcissistic induced state. So, Soros is a guy that we have to pay attention to and do something about. I don't think that a foreign-born individual should be able to pay for state prosecutors and have them do the bidding of the political party that he wants.
Is he paying companies to pay to get the prosecutor?
Yes,
in?
PACs.
That's how you have to do it, because
nonprofits.
an individual can't just pay $1 million to a candidate. So what he does is there are a variety of super PACs and PACs, political action committees. What is it? Political action committee?
Yes.
He can give as much money as he wants to them, and then they campaign on your behalf. The only rule for super PACs is that they don't collude with the candidate. It's like a free speech ruling, which is just crazy because it's a secondary campaign, which of course are going to do everything to get you elected, and you can funnel as much money as you want into them.
They're not supposed to collude, but they do with a wink and a nod.
Yep.
But Soros plays every game. He doesn't just focus on the national politics. He's at the state levels. He's at the local levels. And that's why conservatives and people who care about our country need to be paying attention to every single race. And so there's a race that every American needs to be paying attention about right now. It's the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, where a guy named Justice Dan Kelly's running for the Supreme Court there. Scott Pressler, give him a shout. He's been doing really great work on the ground in Wisconsin, turning out the vote. But we need that Wisconsin Supreme Court Wisconsin Supreme Court seat pretty badly, because if we don't get it, we're going to fall into another Soros judge. Soros gave $1 million to help this Democrat get elected to the Supreme Court in Wisconsin. So he's focused at every level of government, and we're seeing the consequences of that right now, where conservative billionaires are, not so focused on anything except for getting Ron DeSantis enough money to try to beat Trump in the MAGA movement.
It's very concerning that anyone, even an American, can just push buttons and send hundreds of millions of dollars to other people to go do political work for them. Like, that's like a hijacking of our politics system. We're supposed to be for the people, by people, working for ourselves.
No. You can use your resources to promote ideas that you want to see spread around. Any kind of limit on that is a limit on the freedom of speech, because you have the right to hire people and engage in commerce and engage in activity in society. This is Citizens United. That's the argument that's made. The argument with the Supreme Court found that Citizens United, or in the Citizens United case, was that you had the right to have an organization to promote your ideas, that your property, as in your money, you could use your property to promote your ideas. And that's what Citizens United is. So if you want to start a foundation or something like that, and you want to go ahead and have some kind of organization that promotes ideas, that's the Heritage Foundation, that's Cato, that's the Center for American Progress, that's all kinds of think tanks. And
it's Media Matters.
Yeah, that's totally media. God. I mean, and I absolutely detest like what Media Matters is trying to promote.
Well,
they're communists. They're awful. I think that if they got their way, they would literally destroy the United States. I think that's their intent. They are illiberal authoritarians. But it doesn't mean that we can say, well, shut them down. You can't do that. Not in a free country.
I have a personal problem with Citizens United. I don't like it. I don't like that you can put unlimited amounts of money into politics. And in the beginning of the Republic, you couldn't.
How do you stop it? What do you mean you couldn't? You always could.
No, it was when someone was like taking whistle stop trains. They're like, why can't I spend my own money campaigning for myself? And they're like, well, he's got a point.
And then other people would do the same thing. The newspapers would be like, we endorse this person, and we're going to put all of our resources to getting him elected. We're going to put him on the front page. It's never been any different. There was a challenge to it with Citizens United, and the Supreme Court was like, it's your dollar. You can speak.
And also another thing that I want to point out, like you hear Democrats that have a lot of problem with Citizens United. They're always the ones that complain about it. And since Citizens United, you've had Barack Obama, then you had one term of Donald Trump, and then Joe Biden. So it's not that Citizens United means that conservatives and maybe it does mean the corporations, because the corporations are in bed with the Democrats nowadays. But it doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be conservative ideas, or that it's going to be the oligarchy of the church being in charge. So far, it's been Democrats.
Well, we were talking about Matt Gaetz before we launched the show here, but Matt Gaetz takes $0 from special interest groups or PACs. He was the first Republican politician to say, I don't want your money.
Yeah, Barack Obama spent more money than anyone ever, and then Hillary Clinton did the same thing, and Donald Trump didn't spend more money than everyone, and he still won.
So what makes me a big fan of these MAGA politicians, from President Trump to Matt Gaetz, is they would rather have small dollar donations from hardworking Americans than go and kiss the asses of the Club for Gross of the world, who receive $200 million from 5 people, and then they have to take marching orders. President Trump, when he ran in 2020, 53% of his dollars came from very small dollar donors. Ron DeSantis, on the flip side right now, 95% of his donations come from 500 people. And he raised $200 million. 500 people gave this guy 200. And so,
let's address this right here. We got this tweet from Liz Harrington at RealLizUSA. President Trump raised over $4 million in 24 hours after indictment in Alvin Bragg witch hunt. Over 25% of donations came from first-time donors to the Trump campaign. And that right there, I just want everyone to figuratively gloat over this, as I will now rub it in the face of that Politico reporter who said Donald Trump will not earn a single new voter from this indictment. Don't overthink it. The indictment is bad for Trump. And I'm just like, bro, he's got new voters right here. Literally right here. More money pouring in. This is what they asked for. I have to wonder if they're like, if they really do want Trump to be in office, because the media knows that when he's in office, they make money?
Well, I think there's a stupid narrative that I want to debunk real quick that was being pushed by a lot of folks who don't want to see Trump be the Republican nominee. They say the Democrats are indicting Trump and trying to throw him in jail because they want him to win. No, they are trying to throw him in jail because they're absolutely terrified that he is going to win. But I'm glad you pointed out those statistics. A fourth of the new donors are first-time Trump donors. These normal people are watching what's taking place. Normal people are watching Joe Biden throw grandmas who brought Trump flags to the Capitol in jail. They're watching Joe Biden throw a guy who made a meme of Hillary Clinton in jail, and now they're going to watch them throw the President Trump. Try to throw him behind bars. They're watching this and they think this is disgusting. How could this ever happen to our country? And a lot of folks who came over here as immigrants from countries like Cuba or a lot of these people, Guatemala, they fled corrupt regimes like this. They don't want this to come. If this happens in the United States of America, there's nowhere else for anybody to go.
El Salvador.
That guy's pretty base. Okay, maybe El Salvador. That guy's pretty base.
The problem with El Salvador is it's
savior.
tiny and it doesn't have a military.
Well,
like,
I mean,
you don't want to go there.
but it is.
So
it does mean the savior.
I do gotta say, it means the savior, and that's kind of funny. But up until Nayib Bukele, I think pronouncing it wrong. Up until like he got in and started reforming it, especially with Bitcoin, I would have said no other country. Now I'm kind of like, El Salvador's doing pretty well. But for the most part, in terms of the wealth, the access, the opportunity, El Salvador is doing fantastic. So it's like, okay, I like it, but let's be real. The United States is supposed to be the bastion of freedom. And if it falters here, having to retreat to the next best thing is still a loss. It's the loss of the best.
Absolutely.
I've got this feeling of this.
But shout out El
belief,
Salvador.
Oh, holler El Salvador. What's happening, Bukele? I support the presidency. I'm not into do I support Trump? Do I support Biden? Look, I will work with anyone that wants to bring liberty to the world, but I think all of us should be supporting the office, not the individuals.
I got a problem with that verbiage. Bring liberty to the world. That sounds a whole lot like George Bush, man.
No,
that's exporting. You can't export liberty.
Yeah, you can.
Sure,
you can build free software that lets people govern themselves and then give it to everyone.
Yeah, but what if they don't want it?
Then they don't use it.
But come on, also realize, if we blow up all their kids, then their kids will be free from being alive.
Yeah.
So
When I say
George W. Bush might have been right.
What I literally mean, I'll explain what I literally mean, so it doesn't sound so
Absolute liberation.
generic. But I mean that we could build software that we utilize in the United States so that people can govern themselves locally.
Liberty
export it.
is just like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You cannot make people want to be free. If people want a theocratic government, and you give them liberty, they're going to give themselves a theocratic government.
But if people have technology that is muting their ability to see the real world, and then you give them...
What do you mean see the real world?
Like TikTok, the algorithm is making them see what the CCP wants them to see. So if we can give them technology where they can see reality a little more clearly, maybe they will choose liberty.
I don't know if that's true. I think when you give people the ability to see the world, you end up with... I'll just put it this way. I think there was I believe in free speech. I believe in transparency. But I do think it could go either way. You give people absolute freedom, and then they might just become gluttonous. There needs to be moral foundations we agree upon where we have limits. This is why we have borders. I think one of the problems we had as a country is too much of the country became live and let live. And there needs to be two forces of pushing and pulling, where one group challenges... One group is holding everything back, saying, no, we shouldn't change it. The other group says, I hereby challenge you. We go to court. We determine, okay, this was good, that was bad. And that's how we progress properly. But what happened is the conservative chain was broken, and the left just zoomed full speed off into, I'm going to do whatever I want with no restrictions. And now you end up with child sex changes.
We need a strong republic. That's the restriction force, is the Congress and the Senate, the House. And honestly, the executive branch has an opportunity to be a stopgap with the veto power. I don't like seeing things rushed through. So I think actually that we are a technocracy, whether we want to admit it or not, that we've become a technocratic republic. And if we don't start creating a technocratic republic like we want to see it, it's going to get created for us in a way that we don't like.
Alex, I wanted to follow up with you with something we touched on, that you kind of touched on with this indictment, and it was kind of the political ramifications for it, and what the Democrats, like a cynical Democratic operative, might be trying to pull together here with this indictment, that it would make it more popular among the base. But what would you say to a cynical Democrat operative who might say that Trump might be more palatable now in a primary because of this, but in a general, he would be less palatable to suburban white women than maybe a Ron DeSantis would against the Joe Biden?
Well, new polling just came out today, done by the People's Pundit Barris. I think he's a really smart guy, that had Trump winning with women 52-19 against Ron DeSantis. I took my mom to meet Trump in August at a rally in Wisconsin. And the first thing my mom says to Trump is, Mr. President, I had a crush on you in the 80s. there's a lot of women my mom's age that remember Donald Trump from the 80s, and they loved the guy when everybody loved the guy, when everybody was allowed to love the guy. And President Trump does very well with the pageants. He used to own the pageants. And what happened to the pageants?
What about with independents, though? So the polls I've been seeing show that Ron DeSantis does better.
Well, there's some polls that he does better. There's some polls that he doesn't. A lot of the polls that the DeSantis team likes to tout are paid-for polls. A guy named Chris Wilson with WPA Intel, he's notorious for running
do you think
polls.
Donald Trump would be more palatable in a general election to moderates than Ron DeSantis?
I do. I think that how many folks in here voted for Trump in 2020?
Trump.
I did not vote.
I voted for Trump.
You voted for Trump? You didn't vote for Trump?
I didn't vote either.
No.
How do you view the indictment of him and the fact that they're trying to throw him in jail?
Well, I don't like the idea. I don't like the precedent of taking down past presidents, because then the next president's going to take down past presidents, then the one after that's going to take down the one before it. It's like
Trump just has so much baggage, though, relative to DeSantis. Is the argument widely, though?
Wait, this is sorry to interrupt, but that's good. I appreciate that point. And then I want to follow up. Would you rather have Ron DeSantis or Donald Trump?
Oh, this is why we have 2 years to campaign. I want to talk to both of them and have deep conversations about technology and their visions for the future before I make that decision.
So would you be able to say, like, right now, based on what you know, is there one direction you lean towards?
I know a lot of Trump's friends. Like, I know a lot of people that work with him and for him, but I don't like when they're like call him the boss, because the boss is the American people, and we need to serve the office, all of us.
They do. Well, we've also had a lot of DeSantis friends on. I mean, I don't know. How do you lean, or are you neutral on the two of them?
I'm very neutral.
I mean, does the indictment turn you off from Trump?
No.
I think that's the sentiment that's across the country. Like
I real quick, I just think everybody who knows the show and knows Ian, that his input on this is valuable. Right. Ian's got like a weird political stance that's not hyper like. It's not the same as all of us who are clearly on a track and have views. Like, Phil's very libertarian. I'm pretty centrist, moderate. You're very conservative. Ian's the wild card who often defends Democrats in ways we don't agree with. So I think your input's, it's very valuable. To be right now, like, you don't know between the two, I think that says a lot.
But also the fact that you're saying that this indictment of him, like, doesn't make you reject him, and like you're not even thinking about that. I think most people are exhausted by the bullshit that the Democrats have put the country through for 7 years, witch hunt after witch hunt after witch hunt into President Trump. From the moment he came down the escalator, the Mueller hoax, the Ukraine hoax, the January 6th, the list goes on, and people are just exhausted, and they're throwing him in jail over a personal payment.
I guess, how would you respond to people who say that he has a lot more baggage than DeSantis does, and that would turn off moderates? No, wait, let me go over it. It would be like January 6th. It would, not pardoning January 6th prisoners.
I'll just look at the camera when I say this. You just don't know Ron DeSantis's baggage yet, and believe me, there's a lot of material there.
And I kind of feel like he's more likely to compromise, and I feel like Trump is more likely to enact revenge. And I don't mean that. I don't mean that in a biblical sense. I mean it more like I'm not listening to you. I'm done with you. You wasted my time. You're fired. Whereas DeSantis is going to be like, let's try and work together to make a better.
It seems like we're like tipping over the edge of the liberal economic order into the new world order, and we have an opportunity to unify and create the new world order in like an American image, where we have like localized government, property rights, free speech, gun control, gun rights, and things like that. And if we fight and argue as Americans, then it'll be the World Economic Forum that builds it for us. And then we'll be all like still, and then we'll be arguing with them, and we'll be all trained to argue. So I really want someone that can unify, and not unify out of fear, unify out of love and like a vision for reality, like a growth pattern.
Well, in a weird way, I think on Tuesday, our country is going to be more unified than ever before, even though we're going to seem so incredibly divided. But when there's the photographs of the former president of the United States and the leading opponent to the current president, when they're walking him into a jail to try to, book him, that's going to bring people together.
People don't understand, like, he's going into a holding cell.
Yeah.
Like, when he goes in, like, typically when you're arrested, you get placed in holding. It's not like a jail where they lock you in to punish you. It's like, we're temporarily placing you here as we process your paperwork. How are they going to do that?
It's terrible, but they're going to do it.
But a Secret Service goes in there with him?
Oh, absolutely. And they're going to protect the guy.
This is great. And that's going to be on Tuesday?
But yeah, absolutely.
Holy crap.
And then, think about this. The ads that the suburban women are going to see of President Trump being locked in a jail cell while violent criminals are, ravaging through cities, burning down cities, beating up cops, punching women. And Alvin Bragg is letting, he's trumping down felonies to 60% of them. He's bumping them down to misdemeanors.
But Alex, isn't this ironic?
8,000 people.
Yeah, he did the First Step Act. So isn't it completely ironic?
No. In New York, they released 8,000 felons.
And also
Sure, but Donald Trump had the First Step Act, which Ron DeSantis voted for. But that doesn't. It would still make it hypocritical. For you to
nonviolent offenders.
I disagree.
It's Trump-led. It wasn't.
Trump's criminal justice reform wasn't like if you're a violent murderer, you go free.
Some violent people were let out,
wrong.
and then people who pled down. Come on, and he pled down a lot of felonies as well. I mean, I could pull up the First Step Act.
So it was meant. It was one. It's not retroactive. And then two, it was mainly targeted towards non-violent drug offenders. Alice Marie Johnson, for example, was a wonderful woman who I've gotten to know, who was sentenced to almost to life in prison for having just a little bit of drugs on her in the back of her car.
But even then, if the point were this, Trump wanted criminal justice reform and Bragg wanted criminal justice reform. And then Bragg says, I am reforming criminal justice. And then Trump says, I'm reforming criminal justice. And then Bragg says, now I'm going to indict Donald Trump on BS charges that are past the statute of limitations. You're like, one of these people is lying.
Yeah, well, reforming it doesn't always mean making it better. You can reform it into something very horrible.
I mean, how many of you support the idea that people who get caught with a bag of weed shouldn't go to jail for 10 years?
I agree, yeah, absolutely.
Right?
I don't think that's what the First Step Act was doing, and I think that would be grossly mischaracterizing.
That's what the entire purpose of it was to be about. For nonviolent drug offenders who are treated unfairly by a corrupt justice system, who led by Joe Biden and the crime bill of the 1990s. I'm not sitting here saying we need to let everybody out of jail, but I think there's certain cases where you look at and you're like, man, this person is treated unfairly.
Oh no, we got Don.
All right, let's add Don in here.
I'm gonna just pull him in the room. I'm assuming he's here, so I'm just adding.
Let's get back to that conversation.
Smash that like button.
Do you support the First Step Act? I feel like that.
Do you want to let?
I did.
Okay, guys. Don Jr. is here.
What's up, Don?
What's happening, guys?
What's going on? Welcome to the show. I think can everybody hear you?
Yeah.
You can hear me? Okay.
Yeah. So they indicted your dad. What's happening?
What's happening is our country's devolved far further than we could have ever possibly imagined. I mean, this is third world stuff, stuff that the federal government, who actually oversees elections and spent 6 years trying to throw my father in prison for it, decided not to pursue. But a Soros-funded DA apparently, I guess, is following his marching orders and doing what he's told, and what they paid for his election to do.
So we asked Ian. Ian's kind of a wild card when it comes to politics because he's not in the same space we are. He often says he wants to pardon people like Hillary Clinton, but he says it's not moving him. Like you're saying, it's not turning you off from Trump.
No, it's not. But Don, what's your vision of the future?
Listen, I think you need someone to go burn it all down. Trump as a lame duck is actually much better than someone that has to get reelected again and has to play that game. I want someone who will go in there and literally burn it to the ground because it needs to be that. I used to believe, guys, even when I got into this, I functioned at a high level in business and we did billion-dollar deals and, real shit. And, I got there and was like, well, listen, this is what America is. And I believe this and I'm a patriot. And I'm like, oh my God, even, once I went through what I went through with Russia, 50 hours of testimony and Adam Schiff up there saying I committed treason somehow. And then I see, well, of course, nothing happens with that. Of course, none of that was actually accurate. It was all a perjury trap, hoping that in 50 hours of testimony, asking me the same, 1,000 questions, maybe I say it a little bit differently the 50th time I'm asked, and therefore I committed perjury, and that's how they get you. But even I, who sort of had my eyes open during that, were like, well, there's still something to it, right? We all made the same mistake with the FBI and what they tried to do to Michael Flynn. It's like, well, it's the FBI. There must be some truth to it, right? They're not fully corrupted. It's the FBI, the CIA, same thing.
Well, so let's,
then we're seeing them go after parents in this. Those people are domestic terrorists, a concerned parent going to a PTA meeting. But, some, trans shooter can have a manifesto and kill a bunch of Christian kids. And, well, that's not domestic terrorists because they're Christians. Like, who really gives a shit? it's really scary where we're at. And
Well, so let me ask
I want
you.
to burn it to the ground.
So, but when you say that, like, what's the practical step? Is that what was that policy that Trump Senior he's going to fire?
Schedule F.
Schedule F.
Schedule F.
When you say that, is that what you were meaning? Like, we're going to go and we're going to defund the FBI, we're going to fire all the bureaucrats?
Yes. I mean, you got to do as much as you possibly can. You got to get other people who are willing to go along with that. Because, I mean, I think that's what, in 16, we're like, hey, we're coming in from the outside. You sort of assume that, hey, you may have a little bit differences in policy and whatever, but, people still want the best for America. And that's just not even remotely true. These bureaucrats, they wouldn't succeed in so many other things. And they're going to hold on to what little power they have because they wouldn't get it anywhere else. You see that what's going on, in our military and, the woke nonsense of like the decision-making process, the withdrawal from Afghanistan, everything that's going, I'm like, well, they couldn't have seen it coming. I mean, I'm like, you couldn't have seen it coming. You were there for 20 years. What do you mean you couldn't have seen it coming? Like, I saw it coming and I don't know anything about Afghanistan. Like, my 9-year-old son, I was picking up from school that week and he was like, hey, Dad, like, why would we leave $86 billion in equipment there? I don't understand. Dad, why would we pull out our soldiers before the people that have been helping us for 20 years? I felt like an idiot because I was trying to explain to a 9-year-old that, these people are just, they're that far gone.
It's on purpose.
The word is surrender. That was a surrender in Afghanistan to the Taliban.
Yes.
And that should be the
100%.
word.
I mean, they're putting up videos of all the equipment. They have the second largest fleet of Humvees in the world, thanks to us for, in minor details, $86 billion. That's like $275 per, man, woman, and child in America. Like, that's your contribution to the Taliban, who our Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, said, on live TV, like in a congressional testimony, that he was, and I quote, shocked and dismayed that the Taliban did not install a more diverse and inclusive government. Like really? Like, you're shocked? Like, you may be dismayed. I understand that. Like, but you're shocked after dealing with them for 20 years, after watching them throw, homosexuals off of buildings and put, journalists in a cage, douse them in gas and light them on fire. Like, you're shocked that there wasn't like a trans coalition in the new Taliban government. Like, you're not a serious person if you think that. Well, you have no business making decisions for our country.
I think these people they're a cult. They live in this obnoxious internet world that's outside of reality. They're leading us straight off a cliff.
What concerns me, Don, about the metaphor of like burn it all down is that when you do rapid transformation of political systems, the solution might be like trying to solve one problem might create a bigger problem. Like what we did in Iraq when we dismissed the Ba'ath Party, we created ISIS. We put all these high level officials on the street and then they formed their own paramilitary, basically. And I think that our government, it is evolving. We are becoming a global community, regardless if we want to do it or we're just going to put our fingers in our ears and yell until it happens to us. So I think we can bring people together with like a vision of industry. Graphene. I'm not sure how familiar you are with graphene.
All right, come on.
But it's like a revolutionizing 21st century technology.
Well, let me redirect this in a way, not to be. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, Ian, but I'll put it this way.
I go off on tangents. I don't blame you, Tim.
What I saw, Don, with your dad, and the reason I didn't vote for him in 2016, I voted in 2020 for Trump Senior, because the foreign policy I thought was the best I've seen in my entire life. When he crossed the DMZ into North Korea with no security detail, I nearly cried. And I'm like, it was a tremendous, powerful move where they could have just snatched up the president of the United States, but it was a tremendous good faith effort to try and de-escalate this war that's been going on for generations. I saw all of that foreign policy and I said, wow, this is amazing. Getting our troops out of Syria, and they lied to him and to us. And then I saw...
Well, they're back in Somalia, by the way. He took all 500 that we had stations out there, and now they put 600 right back in. And
Syria.
Again, that was Somalia, but Syria as well, right? I mean, I had Joe Kent on my podcast yesterday, whose wife died in Syria as a result of an ISIS attack. And it's like, I do this. I was like, wait a minute, we have people in Syria still? He's like, yeah, they're back. Like, I'm like, oh my God, they did that without us even knowing. And like, I do this, I'm not necessarily a foreign policy expert, but I'm talking politics day in and day out. And until I had, I guess it was Matt Gaetz on my podcast like 3 weeks ago, because he introduced the bill to try to get us out of that. Of course, that was voted down because, the Uni Party in D.C. they need the endless wars. That's their retirement plan. You get the board this seat on Raytheon, and that's how they get out of these things.
Yeah,
and so it's truly scary. Yeah, the foreign policy thing was everything, and that's why I'm like, when I'm watching, obviously getting out of the wars, and the North Korea stuff was great and big, but the worst was the reaction from the Uni Party. Trump's doing it all wrong. Remember at the time, he's doing it all wrong. I go, well, what have you guys accomplished in 40 years of dealing with this problem? Like, have you had even a meeting? Like, you can't meet with them. I'm like, well, how are you? You've been doing it for 40 years. You've accomplished exactly nothing. You have no track record to show any level of success, and you're telling someone else who actually tried changing up the game that they're doing it all wrong, and turns out they were right. But that's what's really scary is, while that's a big deal, and that was Obama told my father directly that, hey, North Korea is the biggest threat. But, right now the biggest threat is like, what's going on in Russia and Ukraine with an army that we're fighting a proxy war against, with plenty of bitterness from a Cold War and the mentality that changed. And, an Eastern European mentality is, let's just say, very different than certainly the mentality of Americans these days. And you piss off someone with 6,000 nuclear warheads because we're fighting a proxy war against them. And they just want to continue. They're going to see it through to the end. I'm like, for what gains?
Yeah. Well,
for what?
Now we're talking about the Uniparty here, and you kind of hit on it a little bit earlier. But one of the critiques that I hear sometimes from some folks is that there were bad hires in the Trump admin, and you talked about that when you first started talking about this a little bit. But you were new to politics in 2016. President Trump was new to politics. You guys come from New York, and the business world. And, you probably just assumed, like a lot of us assumed, that anybody that had an R in front of their name was on our team, and they wanted the same things that we did. And I think it's safe to say that 7 years later, you guys know that that's very different. So do you think you guys know who the friends are now?
I said it earlier, right? It's sort of that you make that assumption that some of these people, they're doing it for all the right reasons, and they're patriotic Americans, and they're not. Like, DC, is a collection of some of the worst we have to offer, as far as I'm concerned, and that's on both sides. That's a bipartisan deal, and but again, they don't have much going for them. They probably couldn't do a lot in a lot of these places. I've spent plenty of time with a lot of them, and you wouldn't hire them to be a basic guy in business, and yet they have a level of power and the money that comes with that, and they ain't letting it go. The swamp has a lot of teeth, and you come in as an outsider, and you're like, okay, of course these guys want what's right for America. It's like, well, we can buy a little bit of that off.
This is the crazy thing.
It's just so different than you think. So I think, now you have an understanding of that, and you got to go in with that understanding. It's so different. And again, he was effective, meaning my father, at so many things, whether it's economically, foreign policy wise, or otherwise. And that's with both sides working against him. Yeah. How many Republicans, Paul Ryan, like we're not going to build the wall. I can't fund that. I want to, my wife's an ardent liberal, and she wants to still be invited to the cool person holiday party. So we didn't have $3 billion to finish the wall, but we have 130 for Ukraine to protect, one of the most corrupt countries in the world, meaning Ukraine, ranked worse than Russia in many instances. We have $130 billion to protect their border. It's lunacy.
The crazy thing is, I'm asking, when I was at Occupy Wall Street, and even before that with the anti-war movement, when you said a moment ago the Raytheon retirement package, I'm like, that right there was such a big issue for all of the left 12 years ago. I'm like, where are they now to just be like, hey, we've got a handful of victories with Donald Trump. We should take those over the corrupt uniparty Joe Biden. Instead, it's like their brains melted and they're just like, I'll vote blue no matter who. Even if it means more war. And now on the brink of World War III with Ukraine, it's like the anti-war movement turns to mush.
They're scared. They're very scared.
Yeah, and that's not a never-ending war. That's like perhaps a world-ending war.
Yeah.
Right? We could get bogged down in the Middle East forever. It's maybe there's some terrorist attacks. I'm not belittling that, but those guys wouldn't have the ability to literally end the world. Russia has 6,000 nuclear warheads. Like, think about that for a second. And you think that a megalomaniac like a Putin, and again, I'm not apologizing for him when I don't want to be in these things, but like, you don't think a guy like that, who many are saying, well, he's very sick, and he's like, you think that guy's going to allow Ukraine and actor Zelensky to embarrass him on a world stage without escalating? Like, no way.
Agreed.
Yeah, when you
No
asked
way.
earlier, Don, what is it for? Why are we spending hundreds or over $100 billion to fight a proxy war against? I think it's because the people that are running the liberal economic order want to position it above Russia in the new world order, and they think that stopping Russia from gaining economic prowess with that Black Sea port access in Sevastopol will win us the greatness in the new world order, and then we'll decide the rules. But what's happening is it's pushing Russia and China together.
Exactly the opposite. I mean, we were going to shut down their currency, and meanwhile it's skyrocketing. We stop our oil production, become dependent on Iran and Venezuela, a regime we didn't recognize, and the world's leading state sponsor of terror. And we're begging them for oil because we shut it down while Russia continues to pump. It's lunacy. The way to hurt Russia would be for us to produce more of our own oil, drive the price of oil down, create jobs in America, and they got nothing else. We have more than them, but we're not going to do it environmentally sound. You think the Russians? You think they take any environmental precautions? They could care less.
Yeah, I think
and China.
In order to help the United States, less about hurting Russia, more about helping the United States, is trade with Russia, and it would help us so much more than it would help them because of our ability to create here. That it would actually be better, and it would position us above them.
And this is what Trump was basically talking about.
He sounds like Trump.
Right, I know.
I think diplomacy is the answer. The Chinese, the Russians, and the Americans need to work together to protect this planet.
Listen to what Donald Trump was saying about all this.
But diplomacy only works, guys, if there's some force behind it, right? That's why Trump, they saw Trump, be okay, he's not someone to be trifled with. It's the nature of predation. Okay, Putin is a bully. Xi is a bully. Kim Jong-un, they're bullies. Bullies take advantage of weakness. That's the nature of that game. Just like an animal in the wild picks out the weakest in the herd. When they want Joe Biden on a world stage, they're we can eat those guys' lunch because it's incompetent. While Putin is meeting with Xi, and while Xi is simultaneously meeting with the Saudis to get rid of the petrodollar, which allows the left to have, the billions of dollars that they use to fund trans programs in Pakistan, which is just being stolen by, people over there creating an oligarch class. But while that's going on, the White House is hosting the cast of Ted Lasso.
Shout out to Brendan Hunt.
It sounds funny. It'd be funny if it was a sitcom. But I wake up on some days and I'm like, dude, I hope that I'm just the star of the Truman Show, and that everyone is just fucking with me. Because if they're not, it's a disaster.
Hey, Don, I know Trump has a long list of accomplishments. I wanted to ask you, what do you think his biggest accomplishment was? And then on the flip side, his biggest shortcoming in his first term?
Ooh. Biggest accomplishment. I guess I just look at the economy was going so good, man. I guess I look at that. I'm sort of I was a blue-collar guy sort of trapped in New York, but I spent all my weekends with guys up in Northeast PA, and I shot competitively, hung out with regular guys, and watching what those guys that continue to come up to me is man, we had it so good under your dad. That meant more to me. I mean, I think, obviously, the North Korea stuff, when I was just baller, I think the Abraham Accords, that was the holy grail of geopolitical politics, right?
Yes.
No one's going to get a peace deal in the Middle East. We've been trying for centuries. It's we got 5. That was, I said, it was the holy grail of geopolitics. It can't be done. It can't be. Well, no, it can't be done by you because you're an imbecile. You're there. You're in power because you were a big donor to someone, not because you've done anything relative to this. You're there because you've been there longer and you have seniority. It's Fauci. Does anyone really believe that Fauci was the best guy in medicine, that he should be making the decision? No, but he was the best bureaucrat, and I'm sure as shit he was really good at snaking anyone who got in the way of him and a TV camera from the 80s through, because it doesn't seem like he got anything right. So he may have got some of the things of COVID right in his emails to his colleagues, but that was exactly the opposite of what he was saying on national TV, because as long as you were going against Trump, you got an extra camera in your face, you got the cover of Vanity Fair or some nonsense rag, and that was his currency.
So what do you think Trump's re-ask what
biggest shortcoming of Donald Trump?
Listen, I would say it has to be on that hiring front, because when you come in as a new, from outside of that world, it takes a lot. Like, it's hard to overcome decades of being like, no, like, if you're going to do this and you're a public servant, you're doing it for the right reasons. And man, it is so wrong. It's like what you see in politics. Like, some of these people that are running, it's like they have no chance. Like, oh, you know what it is? It's a book tour.
Absolutely.
Like, they're running so they can drum up some numbers for a book tour, or some guys are running because the consultant class that we won't hire needs to have a job, and they got to make their 8 or 9 figures taking 20% of the ad buy of someone's campaign. And like, they're pushing people, like, they're being forced into it because the consultant class is like, hey, listen, if you guys don't do it, we're going to have to, just get by with a congressional race, and we're not going to make $15 million this cycle on the ad buy. Like,
Yeah.
It's a screwed up place, man. And like, people don't fully understand that. I dealt at a pretty high level, and I didn't fully understand it. And I certainly didn't understand how deep and depraved it actually is until, I mean, man, every day my eyes are further opened. And, this week was sort of the culmination of all of that, right? You saw the reaction to the shooting in Nashville, it's like, you have moments in your life, I guess, where it's just like a kick to the groin. The Afghan withdrawal the week after that, to me as an American, was one of those, you just felt embarrassed.
Absolutely. And I had one follow-up on his greatest
the response to Nashville was like that to me, which is like, it's not the Christian children, they're not the victim, it's the trans community that's literally going through a genocide. I'm like, well, like, how? Like,
absolutely.
I know you say that, but like, where? Like, I don't see that. Like, I'm a pretty
hyperbole.
big voice in the conservative movement, and like, I have trans friends, and I don't care. I draw the line at you wanting to jack up a 3-year-old with hormones without their parents' any involvement. I think that's sociopathy. But like, I don't know. I think I'm pretty, let's call it progressive on the issue. But that's not enough.
And I had one follow-up on his greatest achievement.
And that's like everything else going on right now.
Absolutely. And I had one follow-up on his greatest achievements, because I know Trump constantly touts Operation Warp Speed, and he hailed the COVID-19 vaccine as one of the greatest achievements of mankind. Do you agree with him on that?
Yeah, I don't, because of what we know now. I think at the time, cutting through that, again, you can't fathom that a guy like a Fauci and the people developing this would do so in a nefarious way. Meaning, like, it's like, yeah, listen, I get it. I'm a capitalist. I understand profit motive. I understand this, that, and the other, yada, yada, yada. But, like, these people's lives. I think it took all of that time and all of those years to fully just understand how bad it actually is. Again, it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback and say, I would have done it differently. But, that's not true. All the people that are saying that now, you look at their social feeds, I'm like, oh, really? Sounds like you were playing the exact same game. It's easy to say you would have done it differently because there's no way to prove otherwise. But, like, your actions at the time, it's not like you called him out. No one was doing that because the media would destroy you. They'd literally be out there and saying, you're killing Americans, you're doing this. You're literally costing tens of thousands of lives.
I want to add too the context of the time. Hindsight is 2020. Back when this was all going on, Trump was being cheered for all of this. Like, this is
correct.
Great, good job. We want to see more of it. In the early days, the conservatives were in favor of masks. Then it flips. Fauci was saying, don't wear masks. So, like, I think a lot of what happens when we talk about the Trump administration and the past is it's easy to look now based on all the facts we have and say that was a bad decision. But I'll put it this way.
Well, the other example, and it's a negative to us, but I'll give it to you, would be like, people's like, well, the January 6th, why didn't you do anything? I was like, you mean in the 10 days between January 6th and when he left office, when every TV camera was saying it was an insurrection, no one really knew. They didn't show the videos that we haven't seen until basically 2 weeks ago, what was really going on. Like, he was supposed to blanket pardon everyone. I'm like, I don't know. Like, we were told that was really there. How do you do that? Now, it's easy to say it now.
Yeah.
We've seen the video. We saw the nonsense. We saw the refusal even a few weeks later. But in that 10-day period, with literally the entire world being like, it was an insurrection. I was like, well, maybe you had to say, well, it was the first unarmed insurrection in literally the history of the world, which is probably unusual. But, like, given the response, like, so I get it.
I
think
ask
it was
you.
wrong, but I think I can think it's wrong knowing what I know now. At the time, I'm like, holy shit, I don't know. And, like, I thought it was probably overblown, but it wasn't so simple, right?
So I want to talk about 2024, and I want to just say something real quick on DeSantis. About a year ago, I went on a Daily Wire stream and said I was probably leaning towards DeSantis as it comes to 2024 because he's done such tremendously good things with his leadership in Florida. And then as time's gone on, more importantly, as Donald Trump Sr. has come out with messaging, has started to focus on policy and the election, it's been a tremendous improvement. The East Palestine thing where he shows up, he does the McDonald's thing, that really does hit hard for me when he's like, I know the menu better than you, and he's buying people McDonald's. I love it. I absolutely love it. It gives me good feels. And I'm like, I like seeing this. I don't see it from anybody else who's running. I like Vivek Ramaswamy. He didn't go down there. Marianne Williamson seems very nice. She didn't go down there. And so, especially now with the indictment, I feel like Ron DeSantis saying we will not be involved is a half measure. He should absolutely say you will not extradite Donald Trump.
Beyond that, but that's the second part of it, right? That's the response this week, which is a half measure. Last week was much worse than that, which is like, well, it's a sideshow that's not real. It's made up. Like, you mean it's a sideshow that you've weaponized, the government against its citizens, against its political oppositions? Yeah. Oh, that's a sideshow. In Stalinist Russia. If you couldn't, no, seriously, if you couldn't pick that out, and I understand just like the flip flop on Ukraine that he did as well, I get it. He's been a career politician. He's beholden to his donors, probably his consultants, but if you don't realize that is maybe one of the fundamental issues of our time, if you're a Republican or a conservative, if that's going on, you think, right now, I get it. The media is doing whatever they can to boost him because they're afraid of Trump and what Trump will do, again, to the uni party. Oh, no, that's wonderful. But, hey, Ron, one day they may come for you and you don't think it's an issue. Then it's a half measure after that. So, I want a deeper Republican bench, man. I actually believe this stuff. There's no reason for me to be as vocal as I am in this. I had a pretty solid existence as a real estate developer in New York City. I could go to the cool person party, and I was welcomed in with open arms and could do whatever I wanted. That's different now, and I'm okay with that because I want to leave my country to my children in a form that they'd actually recognize.
Let me ask you about that. Can I?
We're not there right now.
I want to ask you about that to elaborate on that. I think it's a fair point. When your dad's taxes finally get released, we learned that he loses a bunch of money throughout his first term as president, and didn't take a salary. And I think that says a lot. I mean, you guys are a very wealthy, powerful family. I know celebrities who have, when your dad was running in 2016 with all the negative press, who would be like, well, I know the Trumps. They're actually really nice and good people. They're super generous, but, he's a racist now, I guess, and I'm not going to vote for him. I'm wondering, if you want to elaborate on the transformation from, like you mentioned, going to the cool kids club, then deciding to get involved in politics, and now the media's gone nuts and they treat you like trash.
Yeah, listen, like I said, it was interesting. It's a lot of those people. All of a sudden, I'm like, we're racist. Dude, we had dinner last month. What do you what? I have your cell phone number. What are you, we partied together. When I was young, I'm like, so you think now, and by the way, it's not like I ever hid my politics. I was always a conservative. I was a big gun guy. I was a competitive shooter. So I had my. Had my good, redneck friends up on, on the weekends a lot, but I could still be a fixture in New York. It wasn't as much my thing. It was much more my sister Ivanka, there wasn't a woman, socialite in New York that didn't want her daughter to turn out like Ivanka Trump. And all of a sudden she's like, okay, I'm going to go support my father. And they actually didn't get involved in a lot of the controversial stuff, but went to bat for women who work, and it's oh, she's a pariah. I'm like, so it was probably harder for her in many respects than me because it's okay, fine. If I don't get invited to the cool person party, I don't care. I'll go hang out with sort of my good blue collar friends, which always meant more to me anyway. That's probably why politics, the transition, sort of as brutal as it was for me, was kind of easy because it's I actually get to be who I actually am much more than when I was in business. I sort of had to 5 days a week put on the suit and be that guy. I could do it. I can play the game. I get it. It is a game. But there was a Friday afternoon I'd escape and I'd be in middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, or upstate New York, and at my cabin. And so it was a little bit easier, and so it didn't bother me as much because I guess I just see it for what it is. But yeah, a lot of those people. And, I'm a good enough person that's hey, man, even if we're friends, I'm not going to call you out on these things. I'm not going to do all of that. literally, I'm publishing a book for my father right now. All the publishing houses were so liberal and so jaded. It's called Letters to Trump because we were going through some files and I'm like, oh my God, like here's a letter from Alec Baldwin kissing your ass. Like here's a letter from Chuck Schumer and Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. And like it's sort of I see this file, like his assistant did a really good job just keeping some of this stuff. And I was like, oh my God, because it just shows you how much nonsense is involved. And I started a publishing company because all the liberal publishing companies, which is all of them, were canceling a lot of conservative writers are telling them, well, you can't say that, even if it's just mainstream conservative thought, because they wanted to impose their power. And if they're writing that upfront check to an author or whatever it may be, they were doing this. I was like, I wrote my second book, and it was during COVID. And so I was like, well, I had the time at home. I was like, we're going to self-publish this and try to do it because I saw what the publishing houses were doing to me. And I had a #1 New York Times bestseller with my first book. But you start seeing the games being played. I'm like, let's try it. Let's, they always say build your own. So I was like, let's build our own.
Let me ask you about finish that thought.
No, go ahead. It's all good. But the general point of we had to combat some of this stuff, and I've tried in whichever way we can just to make sure to have an equal front, because what people don't understand, they're like, well, it feels like it's overwhelming. I'm like, yeah, it is, because we're up against $1 trillion big tech enterprise that is just radical left. Social media, other than maybe Truth Social, heavily skewed to the left. Just look at the way they censor and or fact check. You have mainstream media, another $1 trillion organization. I mean, we are up against a juggernaut, and we're still doing pretty good.
Someone in the chat asked about you and your dad's stance on the Second Amendment.
Oh well, listen, I shot 200 rounds today.
It's okay
I'm
number,
about
I
as
guess.
pro-2A as it gets. I mean, I shot competitively for many years. I've, a gun collector. I've spoken at every major, gun event out there. That, my father's more of a golfer. He understands the Second Amendment, and I'm not just someone who believes in the Second Amendment. I'm actually, an enthusiast. Unlike so many of the politicians, even the conservative politicians, where you see them, they take their obligatory gun picture and their fingers on the trigger and they're pointing it at someone's face, and you're like,
Dick Cheney.
I guess you can believe in the Second Amendment and not know how to actually use a gun, but it probably helps to have some experience.
Hey, Don, Phil wanted to hear. I want to go back to something that Iliad had said. He had mentioned what you thought the Iliad, sorry about that. I apologize for mispronunciation.
The Iliad was a book by Homer.
The Iliad's a good book.
I apologize. But one of the biggest things that my problem with Donald Trump was the swamp, the bureaucracy. Do you think that that's going to be the prime focus, that if he gets elected again, is to really go in there and tear it out? Because I think that could really get a lot of
them all.
Yeah, a lot of the libertarian people out there that don't like a lot of the big government stuff, the New York style politics and stuff. The libertarians.
Well, you got to remember that, and I get that. I get that. So I mean, I think you do have to do, because I don't think you have a choice, right? The swamp's not. If you go easy on the swamp, we've seen that. No, they're not going to give you. It was like, my lawyers after the stuff for Russia, they're like, hey man, they want to try you for treason. Like, you got to take that seriously. You can't be on social media talking shit and fighting back. Like, they want to put you in jail for life or worse. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, they're not, like, if I curl up in a ball and suck my thumb in the corner crying for mommy, like, they're not going to go any less. They're going to go harder. It's like when people do their apology tours, and I'm like, oh, that was a mistake, because you weren't really wrong, but they're going to use your apology as the validation for the fact that you actually did something wrong in the first place. So you're trying to be a decent human being by apologizing and just saying, hey, fine, we'll agree to disagree. And that's just the starting point for them canceling you. And so, I think that New York style politics, like, I think you need it because that's what we're up against. And I also think you have, again, all things are a little bit about perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Like, fine, he maybe got rougher, but like, they got rougher because they're trying to throw his family in jail for nothing. We know that. Like, that's no fact. They're trying to they impeached him twice for what? Growing a great economy, and this all nonsense. Like,
Agreed.
You have to have that hard approach. If you go soft, you don't get points for going soft.
I'll tell you one.
They don't give you like, okay, well, fine. We're we're going to let Trump, drill for a little bit more oil and gas and boost the American economy because he's being friendly and nice. Like, that's not how it works. They don't care.
If they had if they had like a moderate Democrat in 2016 and throughout 2020 who was talking about helping the working class, securing our borders, like things Bernie Sanders had talked about in 2015, and they did not lie about literally everything related to your dad, I'd have been like, well, I think I'll still vote Democrat. But they were corrupt, they lied, they manipulated, and they didn't care about our country. And so naturally, for a while, I'm like, I hate everybody. Then I saw the Trump second term agenda, and I said, these are actually things I've been complaining about for a long time. I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't vote for it.
And I think it's safe to say that President Trump hears people's concerns, he listens, and now he knows. I think the test trial for you guys, the first term, you guys did incredibly great things. President Trump had a record economy, he had energy independence, he was brokering Middle Eastern peace, he was bringing jobs back to America.
I just wanted to gut the bureaucracy,
and that's the part that he didn't realize. Like, we knew a swamp was there. They knew a swamp was there, but they didn't know how deep. And now everybody knows how deep, and everybody knows exactly what roles they are, exactly who needs to go.
I don't want to belabor the point, but it's sort of like I said earlier. It's like, now that you've had that insider perspective, like, I realize, like, there's not even I've been a fly on the wall. I've been in the room and I see the reporting about it. Like, there's not a pretense of like objectivity or a pretense of trying to get the truth out there. It's just narrative.
I think,
and I think everyone else has seen that now as well. I mean, I sort of did I did a tweet earlier that went pretty good, and it was like, it's weird. Like, all the people who visited Epstein Island, like, no one's been indicted. No one's there. Ghislaine Maxwell, I guess, is doing 25 years of hard time for sex trafficking minors to no one. But they're going to indict President Trump with something that's never even been tried as a felony for a made-up campaign finance violation because the federal government themselves decided it wasn't real. Like, that merits an indictment and their obligatory perp walk. Now, I think they also turn them into an absolute legend when they do this. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But, like, just think of the juxtaposition. I use imagine Don Jr. did one of the 500 degenerate things that Hunter Biden did. Like, just one. Like, I understand, according to the left, I'm not the upstanding human being that Hunter Biden is. I'm a terrible guy, but, like, I don't know. Imagine I did one of those things. And again, I'm not even talking about the money stuff. I'm talking about the hookers and the crack and and videotaping all of it. Imagine what Hunter decided was like, hey, this is a bit too much for video. Imagine what else is out there. And by the way, imagine how many of our enemies probably know what else is out there. And I wonder if we're being played. No, seriously. Like, it seems everyone has a Hunter Biden laptop. You don't think the Chinese, they give him $1 billion? You think the Chinese give $1 billion to your average crackhead? No, they don't, unless they're buying you.
I wanted to say
they're
with
buying power. You think the Ukraine does the same thing? No.
I wanted to
but
say,
we're spending $130 billion in a country that we don't know, and no one's even bothering to ask. Hey, do you think our decision-making process is jaded by what they may have on the Bidens? Like, I know if it was Don Jr., they'd be asking the question. I'd be in jail.
I wanted to say on the point about firing all the bureaucrats, I actually I believe that if Donald Trump is reelected, if he gets a second term in the 2024 election and wins, a large portion of these people will quit, resign, and they will run for the hills.
That would be so good.
By the way, that would be the greatest thing in the world to happen, and that's the reality. If you had 8 years, you have some of that natural attrition. It's a long time.
Well,
it's
after
25% more of most people's careers. You got to do that. But yes, I think if they realize that someone's just going on there and they don't care and they don't have to get reelected and they don't have to make friends, and frankly, they've been treated so poorly that they don't care about any of that. Like, I think literally, like, that's what I'd be voting for. I don't care who. If it was going on for someone else and they were doing the same thing to someone else, sometime down the line, I was like, I'm voting for that guy just because I want to see that place just taken down to the bones.
I do think that if he wins again, I do believe he will, a lot of these people will quit out of protest and the swamp will start draining itself.
Fear. They'll quit out of fear and call it a protest.
Absolutely. But, after the 2020 election, there was a moment in time where a guy named Jeffrey Clark was almost appointed to be the Attorney General. And you've had him on your show before.
Yeah.
And hundreds of people at the Department of Justice said, if Jeffrey Clark becomes the AG, we'll quit. And now we just found out exactly what we need to do to get.
I don't know anything about his politics, but I'd be like, hey, he's now number 1 or 2 on my list.
Yeah, they said they'll all quit, so the swamp would drain itself at the DOJ. All you have to do is appoint Jeff Clark as AG. So we have a solution to that one. But all of these different bureaucrats and all these different agencies, I think we got to move a lot of these people out of Washington, D.C., put them in real America, and they'll quit and protest out of that as well. But we're really looking forward to a second Trump term because you guys know where the bodies are buried. You know who needs to go. And I don't think that you're going to hold any punches because I think you guys have been treated incredibly unfairly.
You know what? The metaphor I want is it's like Donald Trump, your dad, Don Sr., is like on his knees and they're like beating him metaphorically, in the movie. And he's like, his face is all bloody and he's down and he looks up at the guy and looks him in the eyes and he says, "You're pardoned." I didn't say the word pardon, right? But I used to be famous for "you're fired, you're pardoned." Like he's pardoning his enemies because that's the Christ-like thing to do. I think it might not be the battle strategy tactic, but I think that will it'll just resonate.
You're on the other side of this one. I want him to go in with a bunch of
eyes, dude.
I want him to go with federal law enforcement and be like, "You're all under arrest."
Yes.
I don't want another ISIS.
Yes, Tim.
Leaning more that way, but again, it's different, right? My perspective has changed because of what I saw they tried to do to me. Like literally, I had, Adam Schiff and, some of those guys like on TV, I committed treason. Like I'm a patriotic American, man. I take that shit seriously. Beyond the fact that it's, a crime punishable by death. Like you're just saying like, I'm not American. Adam Schiff's an American. Like, give me a break. Like so yeah, I'm coming at it from a much more pissed off perspective.
Do you think that,
but again, you look at just what's going on. You look at the decisions. You look at the prioritization. You look at the soundbite. Everything that's coming. It is a clown show.
Do you think that we could
it's a clown show?
Somehow
you listen to the press secretary, and it's like, and I got all sorts of hell. Look at John Fetterman, the Pennsylvania senator. They've called me. I'm every name in the. I'm an ableist. Apparently, I discriminate against people with disabilities because I've been like, calling him out for not being able to complete a thought or a sentence. And then and I'm like, I don't think it's an unreasonable expectation, guys.
Not for a senator, no.
For an American to assume that his senator, a person making trillion-dollar decisions, perhaps life and death decisions, sending our kids to war, especially when the Biden administration is saying we're the closest we've been since the 1960s and the Cuban Missile Crisis. Like, I don't think it's an unreasonable thing for me to expect a United States senator to have basic cognitive function. And if you look at that guy,
that's like the minimum standard.
Yeah, that's why he's been in a hospital for a month. He spent more time in a hospital, but they knew that when they ran him in a primary. But he was the most radical, so they let him get through it. They're saying, "Oh, you're a terrible person for doing this. He's stressed out already." I go, no. He was stressed out before, and you ran him for Senate. Okay, like, I'm not the bad guy here, folks. You can say what you want. I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to withdraw my commentary. I think it'd be wonderful if he was a bad guy at Walmart. That's great. Gainful employment is important. Everyone should have it. John Fetterman has no business being a United States senator.
Exactly.
And it doesn't take a brilliant person to figure this out. But, oh, man, they went after me. I'm the most discriminatory person in the world for expecting the guy to be able to, speak.
I want to ask you about this. We have this story from the Post Millennial. New York City jury found Douglas Mackey guilty in first ever meme trial after making memes that disparaged Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. I have the tweet. It was this.
That'd be my first pardon, man. That guy, that was Ricky Vaughn, right?
Well,
like,
but he's
one of the great, like the original OG, like sort of Twitter accounts, like MAGA accounts. I mean, think about, we live in a country right now. This is the United States of America where they want to put a guy for a fucking meme in jail for 10 years.
Not one, they're gonna.
Yeah, well, you're right. He's already lost the trial theoretically. Like that would be my first pardon, because
it's state level. You can't pardon him.
Like,
that's the
think
thing.
of the things that.
Yes.
Think of the thing. Well, you're right, I guess. But think of the things that the degenerate left puts out there, and not a consequence. No one ever goes after it. They don't even get fact checked. I mean, I look at some of the stuff they say about me. I'm like, well, these are demonstrably false, and they're lying. Yeah, wow, we can't look at that. I go, but you fact check me when I say this is my opinion, and you come up with some sort of arbitrary way to say, well, that's fact. I'm like, I'm not allowed to have an opinion.
Well, so we also have this tweet from Christina Wong, where on November 8th, 2016, she did almost the exact same thing, tweeting out for Trump supporters to text in their vote. She didn't include a number, but she even included Super Wednesday, a fake day for voting, and she's not been charged. So I see this story as a perfect example of partisanship.
Because that's how it works. There's no equal justice under our law anymore. We have a two-tiered system. Okay, whether it's Christina Wong versus the Ricky Vaughn, whether it's Hunter Biden versus me, it can't be more apparent. And again, it's not like it's just anomalies. They only go one way politically. Only one way politically. There's not even I can't even come up with examples of the left on this. And again, whether that's censorship, whether that's actual prosecution, the list goes on and on. It's so stacked. We have to understand that, and we have to all be engaged in it, because otherwise it's over.
Did you know that the marshals outside of the Supreme Court justices' homes were ordered not to arrest the protesters unless absolutely necessary, despite the fact the protests are actually illegal?
Yeah, and if we did that to Ruth Bader Ginsburg before she passed, they'd all been in there with the January 6th prisoners,
and
right?
they'd be waving that statute in the air.
How many people were arrested, Tim, in the summer of love? In the 2020, billions and billions of dollars of damage, people murdered, David Dorn and others, buildings burnt to the ground, arson. Now you can loot a Gucci store and steal a purse because it's in the name of social justice.
You ready for this one? You ready for this one? How many were arrested? This one actually, this is important. There were 19 plus deaths and 14,000 arrests. Now, it may sound like, well, then these people are being held accountable, right? You mean to tell me...
How many were let go right away?
Not only were most of them probably let go, but don't you think 14,000 plus arrests over a period of 2 weeks should be the major story of the past few years? Like, 14,000 people were arrested.
They were mostly peaceful.
Oh, right.
Peaceful.
$2 billion in damage.
That. I was watching a reporter say that live because I was like, man, this is crazy. He goes, it's mostly peaceful. I go, dude, there's a building burning in the background. And like 3 seconds later, the reporter got hit in the head with like a brick. Yeah. I'm like,
but to your point,
the lengths they went to, like, don't believe your lying eyes. You can see it. It's happening in real time.
Yeah, but to your point,
what they tried to do to Kyle Rittenhouse. Like,
oh God,
lunacy.
Well, to your point about the folks, getting arrested and being let go right away. I mean, there's a great deal of people that fall into that bucket, but just the total prosecution number of those people are like 50, 60%. January 6th defendants in Washington, D.C., there's a 99% conviction rate. 99%.
Of course, because you can't you can't find an impartial jury in Washington, D.C. They know that. It's what they're doing with Trump in New York. You're not going to find people in a jury that aren't going to convict Trump. Yep. You don't have people that believe that he's got a right to a fair trial. They're fine saying, they're really for democracy when they can make up some sort of soundbite against it. But if they can use it to weaponize against someone else who doesn't share their exact opinion, we've seen this. This is how the left has functioned as they've sort of devolved into full blown Stalinist type mentalities. Look at what they've done to like Martina Navratilova, right? Incredible tennis player, one of the leaders of the gay and lesbian movement. She was preaching for that movement and fighting for that movement 30 years before it became all the rage. Way before it was cool. But then when she came out a couple years ago and was like, well, I don't think men should be like competing against women in sports. Like, I was one of the elite women athletes of all time, and like the men would have destroyed me. They canceled her. 30 years of activism just for having a different opinion. It meant nothing to them.
Insane.
Because they only accept total and complete surrender. I hit it earlier in the talk, but we saw that this weekend. We really should be praying for the trans community because they're at risk. I'm like, what? Really?
So we're getting
literal genocide. I'm like, but where? Like, I haven't heard any of it. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm committing genocide by saying I don't believe a 3-year-old should be given puberty blockers and forced into something by a teacher without parents being involved. And I think they should have liability to the doctors. When that kid turns of legal age, the recidivism rate is like 94%. If that kid turns of age and is not happy anymore, they should be able to sue the teacher, the doctor, their parents, anyone else who was involved in this decision-making process, because that kid couldn't buy a pack of cigarettes for 15 years. But we're going to give him life-altering, body-altering meds and drugs and hormones, and that, like, to be against that makes me, a committer of genocide. It's stupid.
I want to ask you two more questions. One of them will be a bit simpler, but the first one is, we're getting a lot of people asking about your views on Julian Assange and whether or not he should be pardoned.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Assange, listen, I years ago when it first started happening, I would have said no. Now, I'm like, oh my God, like he was on this stuff. Again, years ago, I was like, him, the other guy who gave up the military secrets with
Snowden.
What's his name?
Edward Snowden.
Snowden. Yeah. I would have been like, I would have taken the no. That 100%. 100%. You got to let those guys out because they actually caught us doing all the things we said bold. We weren't going to do.
Wow,
they
impressive.
caught us in the lie, and like it's out there. Like, and now I've seen what's actually going on. Again, my worldview, the America I believed or wanted to believe existed, like that doesn't exist anymore, guys. And every day that's further and further gone. We just are being more and more awakened to the reality of the situation. It's not that it's getting worse. It's probably been really bad for a long period of time. We just now know it, and we're seeing it with our own eyes.
I don't think
so.
Yeah, I don't think that's an easy question to answer. But there were a lot of people in chat saying,
I think my mind has changed on that a lot. Even when we first got into politics, I'd have been like, no, that's a bad thing. We can't have that. But I'm like, now?
Everybody's cheering now, though. They're like, yeah. So
you're right.
I got one more question, though, because we're going to jump over to this Andrew Tate story. But while we have you, the next question that everyone seems to be asking is, how and when can we get your dad on the show? And have you actually come in the studio, to be honest?
Yeah, I know. We talk. I got to get up there. Honestly, if I can do anything to avoid going into DC, I usually will. But I'll make it up there and come there. I'll talk to him about that. And by the way, Andrew Tate, another example, right? Like, and he's someone I've hung out with. I've gone back and forth. Like, he feels like he's been in jail. Like, I don't even know. They haven't even told us what he's done.
He's not charged with anything.
They just put him on house arrest.
He's not charged with anything.
Yeah, they just moved him.
He's got witnesses on his behalf. It's crazy.
It's nuts. I mean, it's an example of what this country could become if we let go of our Constitution.
Well, but it sort of has, right? Like he was when I spoke to him, last, I was like, hey man, come on, if you come to the States, no, I'm not going to the States. They'll put me in jail. I'm like, the States will?
I don't think
like legitimately.
I don't think that. Oh, sorry to interrupt you there.
Oh, no worries.
I don't think that it's bad. That it's really. I mean, it is obviously. It's not that it's getting worse. It's that we're seeing how bad it is. And we have an opportunity to make it better.
That's what I was saying earlier. Like, it's been bad for a long time. We're just like, every day we're like, oh, here's another example of how bad it is. A guy like that, he's held without whatever. I don't know. Like, if you're doing what he's doing, it's hard, right? It's hard for me. Like the Flynn example I used earlier. If he's trafficking women, well, maybe I got to stay silent. Maybe I got to, you can't come out against that. It's, I'm a very strong believer that that's terrible shit. But that's what they do. But then, nothing happens. They can put you away for 6 months. Like, well, why are they going after him to begin with? Oh, because he's actually influencing a lot of young males, talking about, masculinity being okay and not necessarily the 4-letter word that it's made out to be. Oh, God forbid you have, high tea. You're not a soy kid walking around with it. Like, I don't know. Like, it seems odd. It seems that anyone that speaks out against that system, even a little bit, or would encourage a large group of people to not just buy into it, they're just singled out and isolated and effectively taken out. And again, if he did something that's terrible, I don't condone it. But man, it seems like you couldn't put someone in jail for a few months, not show anything, and expect us to believe it's actually real, right? Like we should be cynical based on virtually everything we've seen in the world for the last 6 years. And maybe that's the greatest thing. The greatest legacy of Trump would be that he actually, the Trump derangement syndrome that ensued showed us all of these things that we probably would not have seen otherwise.
We're going to jump over to covering that story, but I got to say, dude, seriously, thank you so much for coming on as long as you did. I thought we were going to get you for a couple of minutes. We had you on for it's been almost like an hour. So, bro, thanks for hanging out.
Sorry to cut in on Alex, but
no way.
You're stealing my thunder, man. I'm trying to get famous over here.
Nice.
Yeah,
Listen,
so
hey guys, the reality, like I said, it'd be easy to shut up and be a real estate guy in New York. You know, we got plenty of good assets. I believe this stuff. It means something to me. I don't do it lightly. It's not an act or shtick. Like, we got to do something about it. And I've had, I guess, the blessing of having my eyes open to what's really going on, and I got to make sure that other people see that.
right on, man. Well, thanks for joining us for as long as you did, and we'll connect. We'll figure out a time we can get you out here, and I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
And thanks, guys. Have a good one.
See you,
Take
man.
care, brother.
Thanks, Don.
Be good.
I'm totally down to just like sit back and have him take over, but we're like 8 minutes from Super Chats, and I do want to make sure we show the Andrew Tate stuff because this is big.
I know what he's saying
So,
about
shout out.
feeling forced to serve. Like, it's so easy just to sit back and make money in doing this job, what we do, just talk about it from a distance. But at some point, you got to serve your country.
Well, I don't want to waste too much time on this, but I just want to say I've gotten to know Don very well over the last couple of years here, and I think he's such an awesome guy who has gone through 50 hours of testimony. Adam Schiff wanted to imprison this guy, and I thought after the election he would have just kind of packed it up and wanted to relax a little bit, but he got straight to work. And one of the big projects that he's been working on is building up the parallel economy, fighting back against woke America. He's involved with a company called Public Square that I know that you guys
Sponsor
know.
the show.
But Don is helping spearhead that company, trying to take that company public in Q3, identifying hundreds of thousands of businesses that share our values. That's how we fight back. He has his book publishing company because all these companies are canceling folks. He's involved with a new hiring board called Red Balloon. Like, Don is building up the parallel economy as we speak right now. It's incredible work.
Let's jump to the story about Andrew Tate because we've got this breaking footage. Benny Johnson posted it. Breaking news: Andrew Tate and Tristan are freed from prison. And so here we can see they're coming out unshaven. And then we have this other video that people were mentioning. Andrew Tate tweets, "Since last year, I've been in 24-hour lockdown, no yard time, pacing a 3-meter cell with zero electronics or outside contact, absolute clarity of mind, real thoughts, real plans, vivid pain. 1 hour home and I can't stand my phone. Some habits die hard. We must defeat Shaitan." And then people were pointing out that he was not sitting around doing nothing. He was working out when he was
eating. He was not missing
big guy.
meals. He is a member of the Clean Plate Club. That man has been eating a lot of food and doing a lot of push-ups.
I would love to talk to Andrew. If you're out there, Andrew. So he's on house arrest now. He and Tristan have been moved from the jail cell to house arrest.
Yeah. So I think we got to hear from the Daily Mail. They say, freed Andrew Tate claimed he has now absolute clarity of thought, an ecstatic taint, et cetera, et cetera. They walked into the Bucharest jail together. Let's see. Where's they like putting all this puff stuff in here. I left Romanian jail. Can you give me the news on what this is all about? It's hard to pull it up when it's like the last minute. But, well, there you go. The bail application was rejected on Wednesday. All 4 appealed the decision. Today, the Court of Appeal in Bucharest ruled that the brothers and 2 alleged accomplices would be released from prison and placed under house arrest. A spokesman for the Tate brothers exclusively told Mail Online, "We're ecstatic to announce the Romanian judicial system approved Andrew and Tristan Tate's appeal against last week's extension decision. They will be placed under house arrest while the investigation continues." So my understanding is still they've never been charged with any crimes, and they have women who have come out and testified in their defense. And a judge ruled, no, you're brainwashed. So to see him be released, it's crazy. I said, good. I tweeted, and these lefties are like, oh, but haven't you seen the things he said? I'm like, dude, he could have said the worst thing in the world. He could have said the worst things in the world. He could have gone on the most vile rants. And what would I have to say about that? Wow, I really don't like those guys' opinions. However, he wasn't charged with any crime, so why are they locking him up?
Yep.
I get it, it's Romania. Okay, so it's not the United States, but my moral standard, regardless of the law, is don't lock people in boxes that you have no evidence of wrongdoing and aren't even accusing of wrongdoing.
100%. I wasn't even a follower of Andrew Tate's. I didn't know much about him until all of this happened. And the day he got arrested, I was hanging out with my friend Eddie. And, Eddie's just your typical 20-some-year-old dude. He's like, I love Andrew Tate. This guy speaks the truth. The guy did nothing wrong. And I'm like, dude, how do you know for a fact? He's like, he did nothing wrong. And so I started looking into the case because of Eddie. And then he had the alleged victims, his abuse victims, that said, I wasn't abused at all. Like, Andrew did nothing wrong and Tristan did nothing wrong. And it's just another example of persecution of anybody that questions the regime. And did somebody in the United States State Department make a phone call to Romania and encourage them to take care of the Andrew Tate problem because he's becoming too influential in America? You never know. And we don't have too much faith in the actors at the State Department or in our government to make.
When two women come out and say, we're accused of being victims, but we will testify under oath, this is not true, and a judge says, don't care, I'm like, some fishy's going on.
At least get a psych eval on the girls.
No.
Like, if you don't believe them.
I can respect that, but we don't psych eval witnesses, exculpatory witnesses.
Not in the U.S., we don't.
No, and I think that should apply everywhere. I know Romania is different. I know it's their own law, but my standard is not based on legality. It's a moral standard of, yo, come on, what? No, you're brainwashed. You don't count. Like, two women with adult human brains have told you they're not victims. That's it.
Well, on January 6th, President Trump said peacefully and patriotically protest, and then, people disregarded what he said in his actual speech, and then they said he incited violence by saying those words. So, the regime doesn't really care. They make shit up, and they try to throw anybody that they deem a threat in jail. I watched a Tucker Carlson Tonight interview with Tucker and Andrew Tate. And, everybody said, Andrew Tate's the misogynist, he's crazy, he's this, he's that. And I listened, and he's very articulate, he's well-spoken, and he has convictions. And, they're just throwing him in jail because his message is resonating with others. And it sounds like another guy I know. It's kind of poetic that the day they let out one guy that questions the regime and the regime hates, they try to arrest another. So,
and they also let Jacob Chansley out yesterday or the day before. He's the Q shaman from January 6th. There was evidence came out that Tucker Carlson showed the video of 2 weeks ago or so. But now he's out. He's free.
But his release was scheduled.
Oh.
And so his lawyer's like, no, this was his normal time to be released.
9 months earlier or something?
To like a halfway house or something like that. Yeah. And then what was it? He tweeted or something?
He tweeted yesterday.
Did he?
I saw it in my feed. It had 16,000 likes or something, and then my feed auto refreshed, which is a big problem on Twitter. You guys got to fix that. And it disappeared in his channel. I can't find his channel.
Real quick, someone super chatted. Matt says to go to New York City. Elad, are you gonna go up to New York
on Tuesday when Trump's supposed to be indicted? Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah, let's get it. Let's figure it out. Anyway, let's go back to what we were talking about. I was just excited by that. I'm like, oh man, we definitely got to have you up there.
I don't know. While we're talking about January 6th characters, I think one of the greatest characters ever was the lectern guy.
Oh yeah, he was on the show.
And I just realized he follows me on Twitter. So
they call him Podium Guy, but it was a lectern. So it's a
lectern. So at Lectern Leader on Twitter, that guy's a goat.
For real, it's Lectern.
At Lectern Leader, and there was
Adam Johnson.
There was a situation where Ron DeSantis was at a campaign event, and somebody took his podium, and he's crying, "Where's my podium go? Where did my podium go?" And there was a meme of Lectern Leader taking away the podium. I'm like, this guy's awesome. So Lectern Leader, he served his time in jail. I don't think he should have ever gone. But, Lectern Leader and the Q shaman, let my people go, Joe Biden.
For sure, man. A mass pardon, and I'm talking about across the aisle.
No.
And setting down tensions.
That's where you lose me, buddy.
Squeezing tighter, I don't think that's how we win.
Dude, you don't win by getting kicked in the face repeatedly until you're on the ground and go, thanks, buddy, I forgive you.
Well, that's how you win friends.
Well, I'll say there are
people. I would be friends with somebody like that.
Those assholes.
You deal with it.
So on January 6th, I'm 23 years old. I don't know too much about anything. I'm in Washington, D.C. for the protest. I'm a Trump supporter. I have questions about the election. 2 years go by almost. A year and a half goes by. Don't hear from anybody. All of a sudden, I get an email from, I'm like, I feel bad. I have a pit in my stomach. I feel bad for what's going on to a lot of these January 6th protesters. I decide to make an announcement. I'm going to donate $50,000 to help J6 political prisoners. 2 days after I make this pledge and it goes public, I get an email from a guy named Sean Tonoli from the January 6th committee. Alex, we believe you have information related to January 6th, and we would like to speak with you. I go on Tucker Carlson the next couple of days. I tell them to F off in a nice way. They subpoena me. I have no knowledge about January 6th. Zero whatsoever. They subpoena me. They force me to spend tens of thousands of dollars. They drag me before the congressional committee. Adam Kinzinger is the only member that shows up. I'm wearing a subpoenaed hat because I'm like, fuck these people. But they forced me, a guy who's trying to have a future, have a family one day, they forced me to spend tens of thousands of dollars to defend myself over bullshit. So when we get back power, I don't really want to have peace with these people who did this to us and are continuing to do this to us. I think that we have to turn the tables on them, give them a dose of their own medicine, and then we can even the playing field, and then we can discuss unity.
They've got, look, people who broke the law go to jail. And the issue is they're saying, oh, Donald Trump in this indictment, blah, 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 misdemeanor charge does not feel real. They have falsely accused Trump of being a Russian spy. One dude went on MSNBC and said he worked for the Soviet Union. Said Trump may have been an asset of the Russians since the 80s, which was the Soviet Union. And it's just like, you're insane. This is not real. You have lost your minds. So when they're doing this, I'm just like, I don't care. I don't believe it. They get no benefit of the doubt from me. But what they're doing is unprecedented. Now, what we need is, I'll put it simply, I will be satisfied right now if Trump goes in and Schedule F fires everybody. It's Schedule F, right?
Yep.
Just fire them all.
And look into that at home.
Because I don't care if they're criminals. I don't care if they're not. We need term limits for bureaucrats.
Yes.
We can't have permanent government actors because then you end up with a permanent government.
Well, what if he creates a law that creates term limits for bureaucrats
What
instead of
if
firing?
Congress creates a law?
Yeah, what if he encourages, what if he works with Congress to create a law
Yes.
rather than firing people?
No.
He creates a law that makes them their careers terminate.
their
job terminate after 2
clean
years.
them out, and then clean out the existing bureaucracy. Then if Congress wants to pass legislation talking about term limits or something, I would endorse that kind of stuff. But get rid of the bad apples that are in there now. And if you get rid of some good apples, getting rid of bad apples, it's fine. You're not putting people in jail. You're not killing people. You're just firing people. They'll go find jobs in some other field, hopefully, whatever. They're all probably millionaires anyways, or at least have plenty of money. Fire them all.
These bureaucrats probably make decent money.
Yeah.
And we should just, it's not, I'll put it this way. I'll meet you halfway, Ian. It's not personal. It's not punishment. It's, we have to reset the permanent government. But we don't want a permanent government, so we're going to terminate these jobs. We're going to set a new law, a new standard saying you can only work for the government for X amount of years. Then we're going to rehire from fresh to just clean house.
But what concerns me is in art of war metaphor is that there's a large advancing enemy in front of you. And you're like, I don't like that enemy. Everyone, we're severely outnumbered. Everyone advance, direct attack on what we don't like. Like just doing the brute, straightforward thing is not the way you win against the superior foe.
We're not talking about violence, though.
No,
we're talking about firing.
No, it's a metaphor of how you handle business.
Yeah, and so it's like go in, clean
Look
them
at
all
other
out.
countries.
Get
bro.
rid of them.
Other countries eliminate their entire governments,
Or at least don't tell them you're going to do it before you do it.
There are.
Because then they know it's.
How is he going to get elected if he doesn't? He's going to run on that. He's got to get elected on that. And he has to tell the American people that he's going to do that. It is better for him to say, hey, look, I'm telling the American people this is what I'm running on. Then he gets elected. Then he has a mandate from the American people. He can say to the bureaucracy, hey, look, the American people elected me for the specific purpose of firing all your asses. Like otherwise, it seems like a dictator going in, gets elected, doesn't say that he's going to change the government, gets elected, and then comes in and is like, everyone's fired. And then everyone's going to be like, oh my goodness, he's a dictator, blah, 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 blah. They're going to do that anyways. But at the very least, if he says, look, this is what I'm running on, and he gets elected, then he's telling the electorate, the population knows what he's doing before they vote. They vote for him. Then he has the ability to say, look, they knew what I wanted. I was doing this. They voted for this.
We're going to go to Super Chats. So if you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, become a member at timcast.com because you can join our Discord. You see, we have a Super Chat from DJ says, is Don Jr. Timcast first ever phone guest? Well, he's not because we had, who did we have call in before on the phone? James O'Keefe. Oh, yeah. James O'Keefe called in and we put the phone right up to the microphone. But here's the thing. We've set up a members-only Discord server, and that's how Don was able to actually call in, which means we have finally set up a mechanism for call-ins. However, some people have said, I thought Tim said I'd never do call-ins. We couldn't get video. It was just a phone call. And considering it's Don Jr. and he wanted to talk about the indictment of his dad and the breaking news, I said, let's roll with it. But I think a lot of you can also notice it's hard to have a dynamic conversation when someone's not in the room. So there's a lot that Don needed to say that I respect and was glad that he came out and said. But what we really need is for him to sit here. So there's conversations in person are dramatically different. There's social cues. There's pushback. There's, let me, why don't you jump in? Things like that. So
special shout out to Alex Bruesewitz for making that happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, dude, Don Kimberly was on a couple of days ago, and
He was like, I'm not on the show.
Yeah, Don's great, man. You're gonna want to have this guy on the show, and he's gonna make it happen. He's gonna come out here, and he's gonna hang out with you guys, shoot some guns with you guys.
Yeah, Don, let's shoot guns. I'm a big gun fan myself.
We got a range nearby with like 1,000.
And there's
range.
some political folks that run from interviews, right? They have to have the scripted interview. They need to say, this is what we're discussing. Like, I've known Don long enough, and I've seen these guys in action. These guys are willing to they believe in what, they actually believe in something, and they're willing to talk about to anybody.
So when you become a member, you can join the Discord, members only, and be in there when we have people show up and jump in the live chat and things like that. And also go to castbrew.com and buy our coffee. Yep, we sponsored ourselves. We are producing our own coffee. We're building our own coffee shop and then shops, because we want to create physical locations, and we want to create products, and we want to expand the business, and we want a parallel economy. We want companies to exist that believe in American values and meritocracy and individual responsibility, etc. All right, here we go. Freedom Jeffrey says MTG is planning on protesting in New York City on Tuesday when Trump is turning himself in. Do you think it is safe for me to live stream it? I don't know. I don't know if it'll be safe. I'll tell you this, because I can't give you advice on safety and security. There are dangers that come with, police and protests and things like that. I have no idea what's going to happen in New York, but I am not. Let me just say I'm somewhat concerned about the potential for escalation, because Trump supporters are probably going to show up, and far leftists will be in New York where they live.
Be very peaceful, because I think, Alex, you mentioned this earlier. A mugshot of Donald or an NFT of a mugshot is one of the greatest things for his campaign. This is not a time to get nervous. T-shirts.
Can you imagine what an NFT of Donald Trump's mugshot? Like the only NFT of Trump's mugshot.
We've got, what is this from?
New York
Eventbrite?
City Young Republicans are hosting a rally on Tuesday with Marjorie Taylor Greene in New York City. So.
Look, I think being peaceful is obviously number one.
We should see if we can get you connected to film with them when they're setting up.
We'll make that happen. I'll connect with that.
Yeah.
But, I saw a lot of conservatives when this first broke saying, President Trump called for protests, and there's a lot of ways to protest. You can tweet, you can, talk to people, you can, raise your voice, but you can also assemble. And the Democrats, they use January 6th basically as a tactic to scare conservatives from protesting this corrupt regime. Our country is going to hell right now. There's a lot to be upset about, and it's an American right to be able to assemble peacefully and make your voices heard. And I don't think that conservatives should be fearful of doing that, but I think people should learn from what took place on January 6th. They should be vigilant, they should be smart, they should be filming, and they should stay away from people that look like Ray Epps.
All right,
I said,
let's read some.
We should, in the United States, we need to make protesting legal. And one of the greatest quotes I've ever heard in my life from Tim, it was a long time ago, he went, America is a protest. I was like, oh, yeah, that's true. All
right.
It's a 24/7 protest against monarchy.
Oh, snap, it's Dave says, Andrew Tate free? If true, get him on, bro. Well, he's on house arrest. I would love to do some kind of interview with him. And I think we mentioned this before. We were talking with Andrew Tate about doing a profile or an interview literally like 2 days before they arrested him. And it was the weirdest thing ever. Because we were just like, hey, we were trying to work out if we could send someone out to go sit down with him and like break down who he is, what he's actually working on. And, he was pointing out, it's a lot of hard work. It's grinding all day. It's probably boring. And we're like, that's what people need to understand, that they see these clips on the internet and they think the clip he makes where he's doing this quick, pitch is all of it, when he's literally telling people all the time it's a lot of boring, hard work and grinding that you need to do. So maybe, look, the last thing I'm going to do is be like, now that you're out, give us the exclusive or whatever. But we'll try and figure something out. I want to make sure we're being respectful, because the dude just got after several months. I'm sure he just wants to have a nice meal and then relax a little bit, maybe watch some TV and be with his loved ones.
I can only imagine
how
how much he's changed after being in solitary. Like he said, that I've never experienced anything even remotely like that.
No, long-term solitary confinement, like it's insane. There's this idea that in solitary confinement, you do something bad, you go in there for 24 hours and they let you out. I've got to know a lot of these January 6 political prisoners' families. These people are going in long-term solitary confinement, 15, 20, 25 days, sitting there in the dark, on the ground. Can't talk to anybody, can't see anything.
Yep.
And these are people who are charged for misdemeanors, and that's pre-trial solitary confinement. That's what was happening in the D.C. jail. And so, I feel terrible for Andrew Tate. I feel terrible for these people who are being so, treated incredibly unfairly.
All right, let's read this. We got Raymond G. Stanley Jr. He says, Tim, I have an idea. I didn't see it on Culture War today. To spread the having of chickens idea, how about selling Roberto Jr. eggs and folks can raise their own Chicken City chickens? So we've actually been planning that.
Chicken City brand chickens.
So I don't. The issue is what are the restrictions on selling on mailing eggs? But the idea was to actually mail like 4 eggs to various members that are interested in having chickens, and then you incubate them, and then you will have the Chicken City chicken genetics. So I got news. Roberto Jr. is getting to. He's about to age out. We're gonna do one. I think Roberto Jr.'s got a couple kids already. We're gonna do a batch of a bunch of Roberto Jr. kids, and then after that, Roberto Jr. is going to retire. We got to figure out. Junior. We love Roberto, his dad, but his dad's a dick. We got him from a farm, and it is what it is. But Roberto Jr., Allison and I actually incubated, hatched, and raised in our house and on our own, and we took care of him with a little tiny baby. So he's more like a pet to us. So I'm thinking Roberto Jr. is going to get a bit more luxury treatment than Roberto did. But Roberto's got it good. He's got open pastures and he's with the boys, so he's having a good time. He's a boss. But Roberto Jr., we're gonna take special care of him. But it's an issue of once he has a wave of babies, we don't want him banging his kids. Roberto did that.
That'd be weird, yeah.
But it's a chicken thing.
That's a Joe Biden thing to do.
Yeah, but it is a chicken thing. It's called line breeding, and you can do it once or twice because chicken genetics are different. But we're not going to do that. We really do want to bring in Isaac, who is half Brahma, half Rhode Island Red, but he's massive, and he might hurt the hens because he's too big. So we're going to figure it out. Little Luke is all grown up.
Love those silkies.
I don't think people have seen Little Luke because he's got a domed skull, and that means if we put him out there, he could get pecked and die because it's a special kind of chicken. But so he's fully grown. He's in his own little locked, little compartment. He's got a little living space. But he was named Luke. I think it was by Luke because he was blonde with blonde parted hair and a big nose. And then Luke said, he's got blonde hair and a big nose like me. And we were like, we're going to call him Little Luke. So now he's all grown up. But anyway.
That's some clever names there. Well, you're a genius for having chickens with the cost of eggs. And
we have too many eggs. I'll give you a carton on the way out.
I walked, you had Ana Polito Luna on your podcast, didn't you?
Yeah.
Congresswoman. So I went to her house a couple, like 2 years ago in Tampa. Or in St. Petersburg, and I try to open her gate, and all of a sudden chickens start walking at me. I'm like, Anna, why do you have chickens at your house in downtown St. Petersburg? Alex, you need chickens. You have to grow your own eggs. And I'm like, Anna, I don't know. 2 years later, Anna's a genius. She has her own eggs. She's not paying $11.99 at the grocery store, and we need more thinkers like her in Congress.
Oh, she's an environmentalist too.
Let's read.
Brilliant.
We got this from Nick P. He says, as a Brazilian immigrant, first generation, I'm all about Trump. Been to Colombia and everything. Lived a good life, then a third world life, now a middle class life. I can tell you that us legal immigrants want Trump back in. We don't want these woke cultists. That's what I saw when I was in Florida. But Florida's kind of obvious because Venezuelans and Cubans flee there. And then they're like, none of that. We don't want that anywhere here. So they're all about Trump.
Yeah. And President Trump did incredibly well in 2020 with the Cuban voters and Hispanic voters in Florida. Florida's been red for both terms for Trump, or for both campaigns. And it's had a Republican governor for almost my entire life. And so that state's in play, but these people escape corrupt regimes in these, countries, and they come to America. They want a better life, especially those who do, come here legally. They want to be able to provide for their kids and have a good life. And they're watching the same bullshit that took place in their countries happening here, and they're not going to stand for that. And so I think President Trump's going to do incredibly well with minority voters, with legal immigrants, and he's going to win in an incredible landslide in 2024.
All right, we got this from the Kellyzel. Hi, Tim and friends. This is the third birthday I've donated, so hopefully you read it this year. I've watched the show dang near every night and thought it was important to let you know. Seriously, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And you share a birthday with Kellen.
The best day of the year. Happy birthday.
It's a good birthday.
Happy birthday.
And you're lucky it wasn't one day later.
Yeah. There was this kid I grew up with. She had a birthday on April 1st, and that's how I remembered. Because I'm like, you're a joke, and it's the day after mine.
I was kind of
nice.
bummed that April
You're
1st was on
a
a Saturday because it meant that we couldn't get Michael Malice out here. Yeah. What did he do last time? He slowly turned into Superman. Is that what it was?
Yeah, he's take off his suit piece by piece.
And then whenever the camera would switch, a piece of clothing would be removed and would switch back. He would be more dressed like Superman. That was a good one. I don't know if we were supposed to tell people what the joke was and just let it ride, but it's been a year.
Go watch the episode. It's great.
Yeah. All right. Eldritch Nader says, like Ian mentioned, this sets an ominous precedent of targeting previous administrations using force of law as a cudgel. This BS threatens to destroy any pretense of legitimacy in U.S. politics, elections, and the world stage. DJT is no crook. Pray for him. Well, Ian's correct, and they've been pointing that out as well. There's a piece in The Spectator that says Joe Biden's going to spend the rest of his days seeing his son, his only living son, be in a federal prison.
I think it does set a precedent, but also that's why I'm obsessed with mass pardons, because I think that can quell the precedent and make people realize that we're in this together.
M says, why should DeSantis be pro-Trump when all Trump has done is ridicule and mock DeSantis? It's a relationship. It's Trump mocks DeSantis because DeSantis is not supportive of Trump and back and forth. And because DeSantis starts courting traditional neocon advisors, Trump sees him as potentially wanting to run against him for his reelection and then says, who's this guy? Like, I support him. And then, so I'm not, here's my thing. Trump is doing a bad job of going after DeSantis, in my opinion. I think he could do a much better job. DeSantis is doing a very bad job of appearing strong in the face of the persecution, prosecution, and Trump's statements. So I'm a little disappointed with all of it, but I think ultimately DeSantis is in the weaker position on this one and probably needs to be playing smarter if he wants to compete with Trump. I don't think DeSantis is getting it done right.
Well,
simply.
Look, I was very supportive of Governor DeSantis, especially when I believed him to be a Trump ally. In 2018, he campaigned on President Trump's message. He piggybacked off of Trump to win the governorship, and he was a decent ally through the remaining 2 years of the Trump presidency, the first term. And I was very supportive of him. I get called out for this all the time because, if you guys follow me on Twitter, some of you might, you'd recognize that I am very aggressive in my messaging towards DeSantis and Team DeSantis. What do? Well, they screenshot tweets of mine from 2021 praising him for something. And I absolutely did support him as governor. But they can't find a tweet of mine from 2022 in support of him because in January of 2022, we started paying attention and got wind that he was building up the shadow campaign against President Trump. He brought in new advisors. And so this, Trump first mentioned a negative thing about him in November, but there was this, a lot of people aren't paying attention to this level of detail, but we knew in 2022 that DeSantis was mounting a campaign against Trump.
But DeSantis has done a very bad job of actually playing the game right. I'll put it simply. The first thing I said about this was DeSantis should be deferential to Trump every step of the way. His only play is, Trump's the best president I've seen in my lifetime. He is an inspiration to me. His endorsement got me where I am today. And I think it's better for the American people to hear more voices on stage. If the American people say Donald Trump is the guy, then they're right. But if I was DeSantis, I would say, what I want to do is I want to be on that stage and I want to speak with the American people and Donald Trump, and I want to give them an opportunity. And if they choose Trump, then so be it. But let's give America as many choices. He's not doing that. He's he's playing the C- level game that actually just comes off as more sneaky. And bro, we know what you're doing. We know you're running. You know what I mean? Be honest, give us a reason, give Trump the praise and credit he deserves, give him the criticism he deserves, and you'll come out looking better. Instead, it just looks more smarmy than anything.
Exactly. And we had, Don was on here earlier. You know how many rallies that Don Jr. did for Ron DeSantis in 2018? And they're similar age. Don Jr. went out of his way to help this guy, and we all wanted to help this guy. We all supported this guy. And Don said earlier, we wanted to have a Republican bench, and I think everybody in this room thought, at least if you're a Republican and if you're in the super chat and you're a Republican, a lot of people thought Trump 24, DeSantis 28. But the consultants would never let that happen because the consulting class didn't get rich under President Trump. The Karl Roves of the world didn't make money under Trump. But the problem that DeSantis is running into right now is that he is no longer working with the MAGA people that got into where he is today. He is now working with the folks, the Karl Roves, the Bushes, the establishment consulting class that hasn't won the presidency since 2004. These guys don't know the new Republican Party. They don't know, and they're ruining this guy's career, and it's disappointing to see.
I agree. I think if Ron came out praising Trump and said, all I can say is I do want to run and I will be on stage with Donald Trump. And if you think he's the right guy for the job, then you are correct. Hear what I have to say. And then there'd be nothing to say against him other than like, okay, well, let's have a broad conversation. Instead, it's like Karl Rove, Jeb Bush, like this playbook doesn't work. And it's making him look C-. But
It's
I
an
don't want to
example
go in
of
circles.
serving the office. You want the best person in the role, even if it's not you.
I like him. I think he's a great governor, and I think he would also be a very good president. But I feel like it's very C- play. But let's read this one. Where are we at? Kevin Harmon says if Tim Pool, Don Jr., and Ben Shapiro had a conversation together at full speed, they would travel back in time. He's correct because we've actually done it. The three of us have been to the future and back.
Is that where you got the beanie?
Not the beanie. It's where we got the jetpack.
Oh, that
you know the
one
one you were flying around on the other day? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we got the jetpack from the future. Yeah. So we actually went to the future and then came back. It's very easy.
Thank you for that thing, by the way.
Yeah, once we start talking and then arguing, it's the speed increases as we attempt to talk over each other, and it goes
Slows
faster and
down
faster and
the
faster.
vibrative
I
field around
texted you when you were trying to ask Don a question. I said, you just got to push through.
Well,
You just gotta
the
push
issue
through.
with that is he can't see our faces.
Right.
So he doesn't know when like Elad or Phil or Ian wants to say something.
And there's digital interference. If you can only hear it over a digital surface, only one noise can get made at a time.
So he only hears us when he pauses for a second, because when he's talking, he's not going to.
Yeah.
Like if he's talking to his phone, especially.
Well,
this is what makes phone call shows on podcasts very, very difficult. But it was still awesome to have him come on and be like, "Hey, the news broke. It's huge news. Talk to us." I thought that was fantastic. All right, let's see. Phil Dudebert says, "I want to know what Elad is working on. Is he going to be in New York reporting?"
We're definitely covering that rally on Tuesday and the
I guess
indictment and Trump show.
we got you right here connected, huh?
Absolutely. Looking forward to covering it too. Excited to
be
see what's
fantastic.
going to happen there.
Yep. All right, let's grab where are we at here.
Also, nice glasses a lot.
Thank you.
I like those.
It's good. It's got
Raymond-
good style.
Thank you,
Raymond G.
guys.
Stanley Jr. says Don Jr. just earned himself the spot as the third best junior. Of course, the ranking is Roberto Jr., then Raymond G. Stanley Jr., then Don. Roberto Jr. is my favorite junior. That's just because he's my rooster.
Is that him behind you? That's his portrait? No.
That's just a chicken picture I got somewhere. It was a chicken picture. It was on sale, and
It's a nice picture.
Got a portrait of
good
Roberto.
we have a
paint on?
Roberto Jr. flag, and we are creating a new blend called Stand Your Grounds, which was inspired by the members in the Discord.
Fantastic.
And it's going to be a medium roast, and the image is Roberto Jr. going because we have a flag that it's like a Gadsden flag, but it's a rooster, standing up tall with its wings out, and it says "Stand Your Ground." And this is inspired by the fact that roosters will sacrifice themselves to save their hens. I find it very funny that the word chicken implies cowardice, when in fact roosters, which are chickens, literally run full speed to their death to buy the hens only a few more moments to escape, which is like, bro,
That's
chickens
awesome.
are brave, man. Like the hens I get, the ladies are like run to cover and safety, but roosters are like, a tiny little rooster will attack a full-grown human being
Well, if you think
it
that's
feels
cool,
threatened.
well, just to be clear, I make sure I walk on the sidewalk, on the right side of the sidewalk, so I would get hit by the car first. So
Nice.
basically, I'm as tough as a rooster.
Well done.
Look, there are a lot of human males in this country who would not run full speed knowing they may die if it meant saving the life of a child, and roosters do it.
Special shout out to
Like-
the two officers in Tennessee.
Exactly.
man.
Absolutely.
They had the bravery of the noble rooster.
You saw the guys running up to the door and like the fear where they pause at the door and the guy on the ground is like, "Go," and pushes him. And they go into what could be a hail of gunfire to save those
LPVO
kids.
up.
Niver in the chat says, still no Mr. Bocus blend. There is going to be a Mr. Bocus blend that is also in the works. We're going to have 4 signature blends. So we've got Stand Your Grounds. And the next one's going to be, what did I call it? I think I called it Mr. Bokus Pumpkin Spice Experience, or something like that. But I don't know if we can actually do pumpkin spice.
You got lots of
Fat
cat would be a good flavor.
Mr. Bokus is not fat.
No. Well, he's getting fat. You should see him.
He's gaining weight. That's
some,
very good.
yeah,
That's very good to hear. All right. Russell Miller says, looks like Merriam-Webster. YouTube just jumped. Super chat's gone. Well, they said Merriam-Webster changed the definition of vengeance. That didn't take long.
What? Really?
Good grief.
Take a look. See if they did. Tammy says, Tim, I so appreciate you not doing this show by phone. This sucks. You can hardly get a word in. Take a breath, Don Jr. Well, I read that one just to explain. I don't blame the person on the phone, but this is why we don't like doing digital calls, because it's really difficult to have a working, flowing conversation when it's online. And I get a lot of people that are like, well, I do tons of shows on over Skype and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I get it. And sometimes great ideas can be conveyed on something that it's not useful in some ways. But what ends up happening was I did Ben Shapiro's Sunday Special I recorded myself on a camera while on a low quality stream, and then had to mail him a memory card. This was back before we got the internet installed. And it was like, Ben would talk, stop and wait. And then I would talk and then stop and wait. Because it's like, otherwise we know we're just talking nonstop. We're talking over each other. At least here, someone can like put their hand up, or someone can just go, no, and start talking. And then everyone starts yelling and laughing and, you know.
And your show's a lot different setup than a lot of these other shows. Like, you have how many people at this table right now? And most people, when they call in, there's one other voice. And
I know.
And so your show's just a unique setup for that.
Jeff Bader gifted 50 memberships to Timcast IRL. Wow, thank you. Appreciate that. And everybody who got the gifted membership. He asks, what do you feed your chickens? Well, we feed them scraps, but usually only fresh things that are scraps. Like today, we did a sushi order for the company, and then we took the leftovers. Oh man, you should have seen it. You throw in like a leaf or a flower, and the chickens will run over and grab it and eat it. You throw in a small piece of white tuna, and those chickens go to war. They're like, oh man, it's the best thing ever. Fortunately, we had enough for everybody. Everybody got a little bit. Roberto Jr. is too nice. He waits and lets the hens eat all the fish, and then casually walks up and tries to take a little bit. It's crazy. He would kind of walk over a little bit, grab a bite, and then let the hens just rip it apart, and then he would just stand up and just wait. And he's a rooster. He's bigger than all of them, but that's the thing. He wants his ladies to be well fed. He knows it's less important for him to have it and more important for them to have it.
Yeah, you don't want hangry women.
All right, everybody. If you one more super chat. Matt H says, Tim, you set up a way for elite members to do franchise a coffee shop. That is in the works. This was suggested a while ago, and we definitely are going to do that. So, Jeff gifted another 50 memberships. Thanks, man. Wow. If you haven't already, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, share the show with your friends, become a member at timcast.com, and buy our coffee at castbrew.com. It's a pre-order right now. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me at Timcast. Alex, you want to shout anything out?
I like to shout out Douglas Mackey's Defense Fund, memedefensefund.com. It's disgraceful that Biden's trying to throw a meme maker in prison. So he needs money to fight and, file an appeal here. So memedefensefund.com.
My name's Alad Eliyahu. I'm a journalist, guys. You can follow me on Twitter at Alad Eliyahu, and also be sure to follow Timcast News on Twitter, and I believe a bunch of other social media platforms. We have a lot of great content there, and that's where you get to check out the newsroom's work.
And Tuesday.
When he's going to be on the ground. Tweeting from there, doing interviews as well, so I'm excited for that. So check that out, guys.
I am Phil Labonte, lead singer of All That Remains. I'm Phil That Remains on Twitter, Phil That Remains official on Instagram, and Ian
Cross on pretty much everywhere on social media. Alex, people follow you to Alex Bruesewitz on Twitter, I know for sure. And I wanted to shout out Don's publishing company. It came a few times. What's the name of that company?
Winning Team Publishing.
Winning Team.
And the new book that comes out, I believe it's the last week of April. It's called Letters to Trump. And Richard Nixon, there's an awesome letter in there from Richard Nixon, writes to Trump, when you run, you're going to win. And, that was back in the 70s. And Oprah's in there and Alec Baldwin, all these people, when Trump announced this book was coming out on Winning Team Publishing, they're all running to the media. I don't mean what I said about Trump 20 years ago anymore. I hate this guy now. Sure, I want. Like Oprah said, he wanted to be Trump's running mate if they ever ran for president in 2000. And then
no, not anymore.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Looking forward to that. Awesome. Well, Don, thanks for coming on. And everyone else, have a nice evening. We also, before we finally jet, have this dude with this awesome headband.
Thank you. It's the Maryland flag. I know you, Tim, you started as you're like, oh, we hate Maryland, but you know, it's my home state, so holds a special place. But hey, good to see you again, Alex. It was awesome talking to Don Jr. Follow me at Kellen PDL. Thanks, guys.
Happy birthday, Kellen.
By the way, we'll have
Happy birthday, man.
Thank you.
Happy birthday. We have clips up throughout the weekend. You can buy Cast Brew coffee, and we'll see you all next time.